which I'm really. It's 6 o'clock. It is the John Justice Show. Glad you are with us this morning. You were just listening to the replay of yesterday's show, which is available via the podcast in case you didn't have a chance to catch up. And as we kick off today's show for a Thursday, let's go ahead and start here with an update on the story that broke yesterday and has already gotten stranger than when we were talking about it on Thursday's show. Here's a bit from Fox 9's Lou Raguse.
St. Paul Mayor Collie Herr allegedly commented on the breasts of a female deputy chief with the St. Paul Police Department while they were in a locker room together, then asked that employee her opinion of the mayor's own breasts. These new details I've confirmed with rock-solid sources with knowledge of the sexual harassment investigation currently underway against Mayor Herr. In the deputy chief's complaint, she said that the comments were unwanted and played a role in her leaving the St. Paul Police Department. The investigation was initiated by a complaint by St. Paul Police Chief Axel Henry, who says he himself was a victim of sexual harassment by Mayor Herr after he learned of other officers who say they were targeted as well. An additional alleged victim is an officer who received this text message from Mayor Herr. It says, "Happy Wiener Wednesday. Wish I was having hot dog emoji with all on 6 today." Then there's a meme that says, "When she wraps you up in a blanket after a good wienering." Wienering is slang for sex. And on the unredacted photo, which I have personally seen, Mayor Herr photoshopped the face of the officer she sent this to onto the meme. Additional context is that they would often have hot dogs for lunch on Wednesdays and call it Wiener Wednesday. I've left several messages with the mayor and her spokesperson for comment on these latest details that I've confirmed, but they have not responded. If they do, I will add their response in the comments. I've also confirmed that the sexual harassment investigation being done by an outside firm was supposed to be finished by the end of July. This story is developing, so be sure to check back right here for more. I'm Lou Raguse. Follow for more news.
It is Thursday in the John Justice Show presented by American Experiment. I am your host, John Justice. We have with us producer Isaac, and I'm so glad that you have made the choice to join us as we continue our launch week of the John Justice Show here on a Center of the American Experiment. If you want to reach out at any point in the show, you can do so. John.justice@americanexperiment.org. We also have a new comment line that we are calling the Blaster Line. Leave us a blast at 612-584-4565 at any point throughout the show if you want to comment on what we're talking about.
John Justice, so great to have easy access to your wisdom. This is Brad and Faribault, and big fans who tune in every day. Love all what you're doing, and you look great on video.
You can watch the show via the @MN Think Tank X feed, also on YouTube and Facebook on both the Center of the American Experiment feeds and my personal feeds on both YouTube and Facebook as well. Thank you so much, Brad, for the comment. Greatly appreciated. Again, if you want to leave a blast to 612-584-4565. So we'll, again, get into further details of this later on in the show in the 8 o'clock hour. Senate candidate Adam Schwarzy will be joining me in studio here at the American Experiment Studios right around 7 o'clock this morning. We have a lot to discuss with Adam Schwarzy, including, his choice, the game that we're playing with the candidates when they come on. Choose your own issue to address. Based off of Minnesota being on the wrong track. You can see that list for yourself at americanexperiment.org. And then in the 8 o'clock hour, we'll dive into further details of what you just heard there from Lou Raguse regarding the controversy of the St. Paul mayor. Let me I don't want to make you wait too long for you early risers. Let me just give you a bit of the latest, and then we'll have further details much later in the show. Of course, as we were talking about yesterday, and as you just heard, the St. Paul mayor, Kahuli Herr, is under investigation for allegedly making inappropriate and sexual comments toward the city's police chief and staff. The investigation ongoing since April, centers on the formal complaint filed by the police chief, Axel Henry's lawyer, including a text message allegedly containing a sexual innuendo. Mayor Herr acknowledges that some of her attempts at humor were inappropriate and is cooperating with the investigation. As you heard there from Lou Ragusto, I mean, it goes beyond the text messages. Apparently, she was going and watching members of the government and making sex noises when they were like changing their clothes. So she did release a statement yesterday to Fox 9 and all the news outlets, wherein Herr's office said, as mayor, I take my responsibility to treat every employee with professionalism and respect very seriously. I don't think you do. If you did, there wouldn't be an investigation that includes all of these ridiculous allegations. I recognize that some of my attempts at humor, she's just trying to be funny, fell short of the standard I expect of myself. We have fully cooperated with the independent investigation since it began in April, and I will continue to do so. I respect the investigative process and believe that it is important to allow it to reach its conclusion. I remain confident that the full facts will come to light, and I will continue to focus on serving the people of St. Paul with integrity and dedication. Now, again, the investigation's been ongoing since April, and Mayor Herr says she's committed to cooperate. It's not clear, according to the Fox 9 article, what specific findings the investigation will reveal, when it will conclude, or what actions, if any, the city may take as a result. One of the headlines that I saw this morning was her saying that she will not be resigning. Nobody was calling for that yet, by the way. Maybe she's just being preemptive, figuring that's the way that it was going to go. This will probably be enough to quell the controversy. I don't want to go over the ground that we went yesterday regarding the double standard that exists, not just here in Minnesota, but across the country, relating to the way you conduct yourself as a Republican versus the way you conduct yourself as a Democrat. You get away with a lot more when you're a Democrat. But joke or not, wholly inappropriate. Listen, even if she would listen, I was just trying to be funny. No, it's totally inappropriate. I was working for story time. I was working for an alternative rock station in Southern California, Riverside, San Bernardino area. We had not been there very long. This was part of the Dick and Justice years. That was the show. It was Dick and Justice. These are part of the Dick and Justice years. And we hadn't been working there very long. We talked about something on the air. I can't remember specifically what brought about this moment. But we went out into the hallway, and there was a sales guy, okay? And he was a very, how do I want to describe him? He was very much your quintessential sales guy, right? He had that, you've got different type of salespeople. Not that I want to deviate too far off what we're talking about, but you have your different brands of salespeople, and you have those ones that are just borderline slimy, but they're the ones that probably bring in the most money. Right, just a little bit creepy. We were walking down the hall, and he went and he shoved his hand into his pants and put his finger through the zipper to act like it was his junk. And then May's like, "Hey, look, check this out." And then he made some comment that was related to the show. And I was just like, okay, this is weird. This is really early in my career, by the way. So I'm going, is this normal when you get a full-time radio job? Should I just expect this kind of behavior? So I blew it off. They didn't think anything of it. And we ended up going into the general manager's office for some sort of meeting. We weren't in trouble or anything. We were having it was early on in the inception of the show. And I jokingly brought up what this sales guy did. He got so in trouble. That wasn't my intention. I didn't. I'm like, maybe this is just the way things are at this radio station. I don't know. But the point being that even if she was joking around, this is completely and totally inappropriate behavior. And one more aspect of this, and I have more to say, again, when we dive into further details. There's a much lengthier story from the Minnesota Star Tribune. It's their lead story today. But there are people out there that are more than likely saying, who've been around Kahuli Her for a long time, there are people out there who are more than likely saying, oh, that's just how she is. That's just her personality. There are probably people out there right now that know her really well going, oh, no, she's just really randy. She's just, that woman, yeah. She just needs a lot of attention. That's right. And I bet there are a lot of people that have turned a blind eye to behavior that she's probably, the way that she's conducted herself for a long time. We mentioned yesterday that there was another investigation. A.K. Kamara had talked about this back in January. He had some details on it. The judge had dismissed it. There was another investigation of a woman who made similar allegations, but the judge ended up dropping the charges. It's one of those quintessential situations where if there's smoke, there's fire. I'm not expecting any sort of punishment whatsoever, unless more comes out. I mean, the Lou Raguse story that we heard a moment ago, I mean, the text messages were one thing. Now we're bumping it up to making sex noises in front of individuals. Tell me somebody got that on audio. That would be spectacular. Well, I need some new drops. I have people that have been sending me messages going, hey, are you going to be playing, this particular drop? Are you going to be playing that particular drop?
You're fascinating to talk to.
Unfortunately, I only have access to a handful of them. I don't have access to. I am trying to get access to the audio that we used to have on the show. Specifically, there was the Max Reimer one where he made the comment that never underestimate the horniness of politicians, or something to this effect, that we had on the previous show. As a matter of fact, in our text exchange, somebody had made a comment going, oh, I wish that we had that drop.
Thanks, everybody. You guys are the best.
If you want to leave a comment, 612-584-4565, 612-584-4565. And remember that you can email john.justice@americanexperiment.org. Let's hear from friend of the show, Kenneth, on the Blaster line.
Good morning, John. It's Ken from Brainerd. Hey, with all of that hot dog talk between that hit my fingers, I was so shocked not here to see John Justice. Why am I being beaten with a hot dog comment? Have a great one, John. Great show, as always.
Thank you, Kenneth. Hopefully next time don't use a speakerphone, especially with the new Blaster line, because it can't handle the audio. For those that had a hard time understanding, going back to what I was saying about the drops from the previous show, there was one of me saying that, why am I getting beamed with a hot dog? That was a conversation that we had with Sam Sansevier. Again, I'm trying to go and track that audio down. Unfortunately, I don't have it readily available. We were playing the replay of yesterday's show, and it actually coincided nicely with what I want to talk about as we move forward with Thursday's show. Michigan health officials have reported 10,077 cases of the Psilocybe on Wednesday. Psilocybe. Am I saying that right? Isaac?
Not sure.
Psilocybe. This is the bacteria that's sending people to the bathroom. It's an increase of 397 cases since their last update a day earlier. An investigation by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration has linked the outbreak to iceberg lettuce served at the Taco Bell restaurants sourced privately from Taylor Farms operations in central Mexico. So you got a bad few weeks, not only for Taco Bell, even though it wasn't Taco Bell's fault. It's a bad few weeks for vegetables in general, as if people needed an excuse not to eat their veggies. And certainly a bad couple of weeks for Taylor Farms. I want the story out of Taylor Farms in Mexico because you have to assume that some individuals are partaking in their own product, in which case I imagine that outbreak probably started down there at the operations in central Mexico. I bet there's a blackout of international news. Authorities say they're still looking for other potential sources given the size of the outbreak. Consumers in the U.S. have been steering clear of some of the restaurant chains and buying less lettuce in the grocery stores as a multi-state outbreak of parasitic disease has fueled confusion over what is safe to eat. Yes, right. I'm sorry, honey. I told Melinda the other night. She's like, you need to have a fruit and vegetable every day, just like the boys. I'm like, I know, but there's the pseudosporiasis I got to worry about. And I've got a brand new show to do. Sorry. Lettuce just cannot be consumed right now. Michigan's health department has responded to 160 hospitalizations as of July 23rd. No deaths, thankfully. Easier to make jokes that way. A lot harder to make jokes when people have died. I mean, you can, but it tends to be a little insensitive. Here, it's just individuals spending an inordinate amount of time in the bathroom. You know who's benefiting the most, though? It's the makers of tissue paper.
Are you saying big tissues behind this?
I'm saying, you know what? They should look into big tissue.
Big tissue.
Yeah. Plumbers as well, I would imagine, too. That's right. Health officials have said they are investigating additional potential sources of infection in North Carolina. Parsley and cilantro were commonly identified ingredients among people who fell ill, though there could be multiple sources of exposure, according to the state's health department. Psilocybe I don't know. I probably said it like 5 different ways now. It's caused by a parasite and can be contracted by consuming food, typically raw foods, fruits and vegetables, or water contaminated with feces. Ugh. It also doesn't help with this Taco Bell stereotype that already is that there's already memes and jokes relating to what happens when you go to Taco Bell. I love me some Taco Bell, by the way. I haven't had it in quite a long time. And you can tell by given how svelte I've become. I'm sure many, I bet there's a lot more cases of this taking place, but most individuals are just like, well, you know what? This is what I get for eating Taco Bell. It's my fault for making a run to the border. Not realizing they're actually a part of what could end up being like a class action lawsuit at the end of the day. In the middle of the time off that I had, did you hear about the Isaac? I know you're on Facebook. We're running the show through. You can watch it on Facebook right now. You're on Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So there was speaking of class action lawsuits, there was a class action lawsuit against Facebook from a number of years ago. I think it goes back to the election when they were going and meddling and putting out false information or something like this. And so if you could prove that you were on Facebook during the period of time of this class action lawsuit, you could receive monetary compensation. Mm-hmm. Did you do this?
I did not.
Oh, see, I did.
Did you get some money?
I did get some money.
Oh.
Yeah.
How much?
I think it was like $550.
Score.
Yeah, So I was like, you know what? Just enough to get like 3 discount menu items at Taco Bell.
So true.
Yeah, it worked out. It worked out well. I felt very proud of myself. All right. President Donald Trump yesterday delivered a scorching earth. A scorching earth. I have a global warming story later on. That was the last story that I prepped for today, so my mind is on all things climate change. President Donald Trump delivered a scorched earth warning to Tehran yesterday, declaring the United States will beat the effing S out of Iran following a brazen overnight sneak attack targeting American troops stationed in Jordan. Speaking with Fox News, a furious Trump did not mince words about how the United States intends to handle the Islamic Republic's latest provocation. According to U.S. Central Command, the assault from Iran began about 5:45 p.m. when the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps unleashed a salvo of ballistic missiles directly from Iranian territory aimed at U.S. bases in the Middle East. American defense systems locked on, successfully intercepted every single incoming missile in a high-stakes, real-time operation. Trump revealed he reviewed intense footage of the shoot-down, describing U.S. service members frantically calling out coordinates with just minutes to spare to ensure no enemy fire slipped through. Now, the dramatic escalation, of course, comes despite the behind-the-scenes continued diplomatic talks. Things had been kind of quiet for a few days, at least. In the meantime, Trump made good on his threat. U.S. forces did launch massive airstrikes on Iranian targets overnight in response to Tehran's attack. The new strike, they say, from the U.S. Central Command is doing that thing with my fingers, a powerful response to yesterday's attempted Iranian attack. This was a post on social media last night. The flare-ups on multiple fronts after several days of relative calm raised the risk of a return to all-out war. It also underscored the difficulty of winding down the 5-month conflict that has jolted the world economy and is unpopular among Americans. There's also this continued talk about the diminishing stockpiles of ammunition, and this is something that initially I wasn't that concerned about, and I'm still not that concerned about. It seems as if there's a lot of individuals who are playing the role of experts regarding just how much we have in terms of ammunition to use and wage war, doing, as I've said, back of the napkin math, saying, well, it's been going on for this long based on the number of airstrikes and how much we have, then it's probably depleted to here. That being said, the chatter is escalating. And it's one of these issues where I think the administration is probably going to have to draw attention to it at some point in the near future. Because I'm not going to lie, if those stories happen to be legitimate and true, that is really distressing. There's a lot of talk that Iran is being supplied weapons through China and maybe even Russia. And if we are depleting our resources and things were to escalate, that puts the United States in a really, really bad position. And again, I'm not putting a lot of stock in these reports. TDS is strong these days, has been for a long, long time. And there's a lot of individuals that want to make Trump look as bad as possible, bring about more negativity to the operations, attempting to stop Iran's ability to wage war against us and our allies. But with that chatter increasing, it's something that the Department of Defense is probably, or the Department of War, I should say, the Department of War is probably going to have to address in the near future. One more point I want to make on this, and then we'll get into the Fauci hearing from yesterday. I got a lot of audio to share with you on the show this morning. But for those who have been watching the situation with Iran, and like myself, want to see this come to an end, wanting to know and questioning why we haven't delivered a decisive blow against the regime. As I've talked about, it's not an easy task. You can't decimate the country. You don't want to put the Iranian people, whom are at no fault of what's going on under this tyrannical regime, at further risk. There's another element, though, and that's context. Context matters in this situation. I'm reminded of when you see a major uprising, a riot taking place in some metropolitan city that you don't live in, and it looks as if the entire city is on fire. And that rings true when it comes to the riots in 2020 in Minneapolis. If you don't have any geographical perspective on the size of Minneapolis and the area in which these different altercations are taking place, or the ICE operations at the end of last year heading into the beginning of this year, same circumstance when those riots took place in the streets, then your perception is that, oh my gosh, the entire city is under siege. The entire city is being overwhelmed by anti-ICE protesters and Antifa, when the reality is it's usually confined to very, very small areas. The size of Iran is roughly a third of the United States. And as was reported this morning on Fox News about these airstrikes in response to Iran's attack on our military bases, the military assets of Iran, Iran's military in general, it's incredibly fragmented. This was the IRGC that carried this out, but even then, there are multiple factions in various parts of the country spread throughout the geography of Iran. These rogue military elements. So it's not as easy as I think a lot of people believe. It's not as easy as a lot of people think. Unfortunately, too many individuals end up acting like they're experts on all of this. Too many talk show hosts and commentators act like they're experts on all of this. When the reality is, no, there's a lot of legitimate contextual reasons why we simply have not been able to go and deliver any type of decisive blow against this regime. All that being said, we still need to bring this to a close at some point in the near future. And I hope that, again, the administration at some point, if they need to, addresses the diminishing stockpiles and also just how much longer they think this is going to take place and what it is that they're currently attempting to achieve. All right, if you want to drop an email, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. I see your comments coming into the blaster line. We'll get to some of those in just a moment. 612-584-4565. Also on the way, speaking of individuals becoming experts, we're going to dive into the Fauci hearing from yesterday, which was mostly just an exercise for Republicans to go and hammer Fauci because he basically invoked the Fifth Amendment some 111 times yesterday. It is really entertaining, though. So I have audio to share. We also have some audio of individuals who are very, very upset, known personalities on TV, very upset at the way the GOP handled Anthony Fauci yesterday. Comments from Tulsi Gabbard and a montage. Again, pointing to the fact that a whole lot of individuals acted like they were experts on pandemics and COVID, and they had no idea what they were talking about. That, along with your blasts, coming up in just a moment here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment.
I looked it up, and the percentage of children in poverty in Minnesota is about 10%, which is lower than the national average. So how come somewhere around a third, 33%, say, of children in Minnesota are on Medicaid if they aren't poor?
Sure, my kids are grown now, but I had 3 kids that I raised, and for us, we could make over $100,000 a year, and still our kids would be on Medicaid, if you can imagine that. That's middle class. That's crazy. And, we also, as a state, I think we should really measure ourselves by how few people have to rely on the government for health care, not how many. Mm-hmm. But if you ask, Governor Walz, he'll say the more people we feed, the better. The more people on government programs, the better. And that's really how he measures the state. And we really see that in the numbers in Medicaid, which have just exploded.
Think about it. Now that school's back in session, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
We're doing a really big deep dive on Medicaid right now at the center. We're looking at just how the heck this has gotten so out of control in Minnesota. And just like since 2023, okay, we spent $18 billion on Medicaid in the state, okay? Now we are spending $27 billion in this year, okay? And we are spending that on fewer people on Medicaid. So there was 1.4 million people on Medicaid in 2023. Now there is 1.2. So you have to ask yourself, how in the heck can we be spending that much more money on Medicaid? And we're really looking into that because we think a lot of that money is going to people who are dead, people who live in other states, people who are on more than one program. And you are not surprised because you've seen that on so many different programs in the state of Minnesota. But Medicaid is by far the biggest enchilada when it comes to that.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
It is a John Justice show.
Yes, John, I was wondering if Taco John's was losing blame Taco thing with this.
That was really difficult to hear. My apologies. That was friend of the show, Gary, asking if maybe Taco John's was involved in the lettuce cilantro parasite with Taco Bell. There's Isaac's unaware. In my neck of the woods up in Blaine, the great taco wars of Blaine continue. There is a Taco John's and a Taco Bell directly within burrito throwing distance of one another. And so they're divided, like the way the road is split up. There's a roundabout now that's at the end of the block, and I'm wondering how much that has changed the calculation. But I imagine for a lot of people that are looking to get tasty fast food, tasty Mexican-style fast food, it often just depends on what side of the street you're driving on. So that's why people are mentioning the Taco John's.
I need a Taco Bell tweet that says they're going to beat the effing S out of Taco
Oh,
Bell. That would be fun.
Do you have a... Are you a frequenter of any of those establishments?
Oh, I'm a frequenter of Taco Bell.
Taco Bell. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah.
I do like me some Taco John's on occasion.
Mm-hmm.
But defaulting, I'm probably going to Taco Bell. No offense, Taco John's.
Yeah, as you should.
Hey, listen, they want to come advertise on the show, they can persuade me.
Yep.
I'm happy to bring in, once I can eat a little bit. Like I said, I'm watching my weight. But that being said, I wouldn't mind me some breakfast Olays from Taco John's.
Yes.
If you're interested in advertising, and thank you to everybody who's reached out as we get ready to add some fantastic new sponsors and some sponsors you've heard before of the John Justice Show. If you're interested in advertising on the show, john.justice@americanexperiment.org, and we'll get you situated. Let's go and talk with Richard. He has a comment on the controversy relating to Kahuli-Hur that we've been talking about the past few days.
Good morning, John. I thought that when we had St. Paul with a female mayor and an all-female council, we weren't going to have these distractions. We weren't going to have these type of issues that came up. Guess we just proved them all wrong.
Yep. Well, and again, I don't blame the other the females who are involved in the leadership in St. Paul. This seems to all be of Kahuli-Hur's own making. I just, to use the phrase, I find the whole thing really fascinating.
You're fascinating to talk to.
Typically, when people act this way, when they feel it's okay to act this way, joking or not, it's because they've gotten really comfortable doing it. Lonely Highway Theory. All right, friend of the show, Pat, wants to talk about the potential depleting of our stockpile of military assets and weaponry on the blaster line this morning.
Hey, John, Pat, friend of the show. I wonder how much of this stockpile being depleted information is intentional disinformation put out by us. That's a common tactic where you put out disinformation. They did it big time during World War II. Why wouldn't they keep the disinformation campaign going on to throw the enemies off? I will talk to you later. Bye.
Pat, that's a really good point that I hadn't thought of. It speaks to my reluctance to buy into the narratives that are being put forward right now, especially given just how far people will go when, having to deal with Trump derangement syndrome. However, you make a really excellent point. It would be absolutely strategically advantageous for the United States to allow this information, or maybe it's a combination of the two. Maybe you have a circumstance wherein you do have those that want to try to make this administration look bad, question what we're doing militarily in Iran, and we're just basically capitalizing on it, knowing that it's not the truth, and allowing that to spread in order to take strategic advantage in our efforts to go and thwart Iran's ability to go and wage war against their perceived enemies. That's a really, really good point, Pat, and it's fantastic to hear from you. Let's hear from Alex in the blaster line.
John, good morning. If you haven't already, watch the TMZ speech by their main guy, and I don't commit his name to memory because he doesn't matter. But he talks about the Fauci testimony. It's actually quite entertaining.
Well, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I actually have the clip as we move into the Fauci hearing. So first off, let me give you some details of what transpired yesterday. Listen, this is an effort in futility. Nothing is really being accomplished here when it comes to these hearings. I've long been a critic of these types of committee hearings. They're basically just a means for whichever party wants to take advantage of whoever is on the congressional hearing hot seat, giving them the ability to have clips that they can share online, and usually they just get stonewalled by whomever is being interviewed. What's interesting about this, though, is that Anthony Fauci going and invoking the Fifth Amendment some 111 times yesterday certainly flies in the face of what he said a while back relating to the potential of him being hauled before Congress. These comments did not age very well in light of that committee hearing yesterday.
Well, if I become a punching bag, I'm a punching bag, but I am very happy to testify before any congressional oversight committee. I have nothing to hide. I can explain and validate everything that I've done. So, it's going to be inconvenient if they actually are out there essentially threatening to make my life miserable. But I'm going to do what I need to do, and that is cooperate fully, because we have nothing to hide at all.
Apparently, he has everything to hide, because he did not offer up an answer to any of the questions. I'll share with you the audio coming up in just a moment. And it's maddening. The guy is a narcissist, a legend in his own mind, who did this country a grave disservice as he atrociously guided the policy of the presidency in the middle of the worst pandemic that we've ever dealt with. I would have liked to have heard answers. I would like to hear what his response is to the questions regarding gain of function research that you'll hear. I didn't have an expectation that we would get any of that. I'm not surprised at all that he invoked the Fifth Amendment again 111 times yesterday. But I personally would have loved to have heard his answers. It's too bad he couldn't keep to his word. Now, to the previous talkbacker, there were those that were very upset, lamenting the way that Fauci was being treated, including TMC's Harvey Levin, calling the attacks on Dr. Anthony Fauci one of the most heartbreaking things that he has witnessed in government.
I have not used TMZ's YouTube channel to vent personal feelings about issues, but I'm going to do that today. Watching Anthony Fauci before a congressional hearing taking the Fifth Amendment is just one of the most heartbreaking things I have seen in government in my lifetime. And this is something we need to reckon with. That I'm going to say up front, I have problems the way the CDC handled COVID. I think that they did damage to children, to adults, and I don't think they did it maliciously. I think they did it because they were using their judgment and were overprotective, and I think at times overstated things they said they knew but really didn't. And I have personal problems with the way that COVID was handled. That said, Anthony Fauci, over a period of decades, has been an amazing public servant. In the 80s, I had many friends who died of AIDS, a horrible, painful death.
I don't care.
And
what
I
he
had
did in the
friends
80s.
who lived because of Anthony Fauci, because he was willing to look at experimental drugs in a different way than they had looked at them before. And that really resulted in lives saved. And he has done so many other things in his career to thwart epidemics, to save lives, not just in the United States, but all over the world. He has been a dedicated public servant who could have made a lot more money outside of government than inside, but he stayed. And now we are at a point where members of Congress, and yes, you, Rand Paul, are on a witch hunt. And the best I can say for Rand Paul is that he's being really honest. I mean, he has said now over a period of years, he wants Anthony Fauci in a jail cell. He has said it out loud. He wants him in a jail cell.
Of course he wants him in a jail cell, if there is enough to put him there. But this is falling in line with what Governor Tim Walz said about Tulu Vang, the illegal alien child rapist, that we shouldn't be judged on our worst day. No, I'm sorry, TMZ, Harvey Levin, as if you had any sort of credibility whatsoever. Fauci may have done great things back in the 80s in terms of health and the community and what people were dealing with back then, but it doesn't justify his narcissism and the way that he guided this country through the pandemic and the lives that were lost because of his policy. I mean, to that point, let's get to a few of the clips here. This is Josh Hawley. Probably was the rock star yesterday. And again, this is just going to be Republicans grilling Fauci and Fauci invoking the Fifth Amendment. But the commentary coming from Republicans is incredibly relevant. I do want to say that there's really no chance of anything happening to Anthony Fauci. He's been given a pardon by Joe Biden, probably via the auto pen. And I have audio of President Donald Trump, who all but said there's very little that he can do regarding that pardon, even if it was done by an auto pen, in order to bring about enough evidence to overturn that pardon. I'll share that with you in just a moment, but let me play for you a couple of the clips, starting with this one and Josh Hawley versus Anthony Fauci.
Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color is the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyer is sitting behind you now, shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people.
Leading up to the hearing, Rand Paul released more than 1,000 pages of Fauci's personal diary covering the pandemic years. We talked about this on yesterday's show. If you missed any of it, be sure to check out the podcast available on most of your podcast platforms and also on the MixLR app where you can listen to the show live. Pointing to some of the notes about the early efforts at understanding how the virus emerged, Paul wrote that the social media platform X, that what Fauci wrote privately and what he told the country are two different stories. Some of the diary entries, including Fauci's uncertainty in the pandemic's earliest days as scientists around the world raced to understand the new virus and how best to curb it before vaccines could be created, already were reflected in a 2024 memoir and in the interviews at the time. But they have nonetheless drawn attention from people who blame Fauci for mask mandates, school closures, and other policies that they believed infringed on their rights as hundreds of thousands of people were dying. And this is the concern here and why it's very difficult to land on a place to actually go and prosecute Anthony Fauci, even though I believe that he is guilty. in upending this country for generations, people were looking to him. People were looking to Dr. Birx. And the commentary here is absolutely correct. When you consider those mask mandates, the school closures, and the policies, and the detrimental harm that it has done on our society and our young people who are going to be dealing with this for the rest of their lives. I have 2 young boys. Well, they're adults now, but I had 2 young. They were younger then. I have a 24-year-old and 19-year-old. They're amazing boys, mostly through my wife Melinda's efforts as a mother, because she is a fantastic mom. You know, and our job as parents was to help mitigate the damage that was being done because of the way that society had been completely upended. But right now, we're dealing with the crisis in this country that's starting to emerge, and people are talking about it more, about how those younger generations that lived through COVID, they have not been able to develop the social skills to just talk to one another, to just have a normal conversation. To the point where when adults go and talk with teenagers, individuals, you know, who are, you know, in their early 20s, and they're actually able to carry on a dialogue, it really sticks out. They're like, wow, that boy, he really knows how to communicate. He's really good at that. We never talked like that when we were younger. You would talk about people being nice, but in terms of communication skills, it was something that everybody had. You know, smartphones played a lot into this, but make no mistake, this closing of our schools, the isolation that was done for the entirety of that year or more, separating people out and driving them to their dopamine rewarding black screens, has done an immense amount of harm to the younger generations in our society. And it's mostly because of what Anthony Fauci put forward in terms of what the policy should be in attempting to go and deal with this pandemic. Ahead of the hearing, President Donald Trump wrote on social media that he stopped relying on Fauci over the course of the pandemic because he felt Fauci made bad decisions about masks, shutdowns, and other issues. Now, with regard to what Trump said and the possibility of holding Anthony Fauci accountable.
Well, the only thing you can really think about is the AutoPen, because the most powerful thing a president has, they say, is the power of pardon. So he was pardoned by Biden, and I respect that. I know how powerful it is. It's a very powerful, they say it's literally the most powerful thing a president has. Now, whether or not I sign my things directly, always, almost everything I sign directly. You're witness to many of them. He signed very few. The only thing I know that he signed was Hunter Biden's pardon. But I'm not sure that he signed, he probably didn't sign this one. So I can't tell you what the law is. I've heard that you have to have a lot of proof. You need to have letters. You need to have all sorts of things that the person operating the AutoPen has to know exactly what it's all about. He didn't know what it was about because I saw him testify. So maybe there's something on the AutoPen. Other than that, the power of pardon is very powerful.
Let's go back to the blaster line.
Good morning, John. Part of these Harvey's comments about Fauci is the fact that he's caused, their experimental stuff has caused a lot of these viruses and illnesses, and that's going all the way back to the 1980s as well as the AIDS situation. He's part of the reason it occurred.
Thank you for the comment. If you want to leave a blast, you can do so by simply calling 612-584-4565. That's 612-584-4565. You can also drop me an email, john.justice@americanexperiment.org.
Hey, good morning, John. This is friend of the show, Deborah from Fridley. Regarding Fauci, it's not going to go well for him if he tries to plead the fifth when he meets God. We might not get our justice here, but one day justice will be served. Make it a great day, and as always, it is a great show.
Thank you very much. Listen, you're absolutely right about that. But even before that happens, you know, Fauci's career, and maybe it was coming to an end anyways, his career, it's over. Right? He now has basically half the country that's never going to trust him again. Rightfully so. Listen, you know that this hearing was important when John Fetterman, of all people, wears a suit. I know. Even Isaac agrees with him. Producer Isaac agrees with that one.
Yeah, true.
He was in a suit. I haven't seen you in a suit yet.
Sheesh.
Yeah, it tells you how much seriously you take me in this show.
Hey, if a senator doesn't have to wear a suit, then I don't either.
Okay. All right. You do. Okay. Once again, Isaac, you do make an excellent point. Here's a bit of what John Fetterman had to say yesterday during the Fauci hearing.
It's not about much more your regrets, but I have one. And that is early on that there was the theory that the virus could have emerged from the lab. And early on that became like a right-wing kinds of theory. And I thought it seemed to make sense. Now, there was a really advanced lab that was close by, and then you have this unknown virus out. So, but that became a very partisan thing. And now it seems now it's more and more emerging theory that would have come from the lab. Now, I think that the next time our nation's facing something like this, we are not become, as I might have been, blinded by the partisan idea.
And Fetterman's right. He needs to just go ahead and become a Republican already. I mean, at this point in time, you're not going to gain any sort of credibility with the Democrat Party when you take a moderate stance anymore. You need to go the route of Tulsi Gabbard. I have some audio of Tulsi Gabbard to play here in just a moment as well. Let me get to another clip from the hearing yesterday. Senator Bernie Moreno, again, taking the opportunity, knowing that they're not going to get any answer from Anthony Fauci as he continued to go and invoke the Fifth Amendment, despite the fact that he did say in the past that he was more than willing to answer questions. Here's a bit of that exchange with Senator Bernie Moreno.
It was about 6 years ago today that I decided I'm going to give up my businesses, sell them all, run for office, run for the United States Senate. Here I am sitting in front of you 6 years later saying, who the fuck do you think you were for doing that? It is a total disgrace what you did to this country. And if my Democrat colleagues are standing there defending you, I hope the voters of the United States of America watch the clips of every one of you doting on a guy who was more interested in being a celebrity than saving American people. I will make it my mission to make certain that every single one of those Democrats who did that will see that clip over and over and over again. Because there is no defense of what you did. You may have had a 50-plus year legacy of public service, but it ends in total and complete disgrace. So let me ask you an opportunity to answer one question. Will you apologize, just apologize, to the people who you harmed through your actions? Will you say, do you have the dignity to just say you're sorry?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's go back to the blaster line, 612-584-4565. Friend of the show, Scott, has left a comment. So, Scott Conn level, 1 to 5, 5 being the most fired up, 1 being the least enthusiastic. He's talking about Anthony Fauci. He's also talking about Tim Walz. So, I know you don't know Scott very well, but Isaac, we can play Scott Conn level before we play his comment from the blaster line. What do you think from a 1 to 5 scale?
Oh, give me Scott Conn 4.
Okay. You know what? It's not a competition. I'm just going to agree with you.
All right.
I'm going to go with Scott Conn 4. Let's see what Scott has to say on the blaster line this morning.
Good morning, John. If there's one thing that gets me really fired up is Anthony Fauci and the Tim Walz types who locked us all down, scared everybody into hiding in their basements with their masks over a virus that there's nothing that was going to stop the virus from doing what it did. And all it did was ruin our society, make people dependent on government. And now we have this huge mess because of the calls like this.
Looks like we were both wrong. That was Scott Conn 5.
Yeah, wow. He was fired up.
That was the most fired up that I think I'd heard. A friend of the show, Scott. John.justice@AmericanExperiment.org. You can also leave a comment, 612-584-4565. To the previous point of a talkbacker. During COVID, Anthony Fauci is, being the lead scientist, doing that thing with my fingers, guiding policy. Make no mistake, his horrible advice, his country generational destroying advice was spread far and wide by a whole bunch of noteworthy politicians, celebrities, and public figures who suddenly acted like all of those internet trolls who become an expert on whatever major issue is going on. Individuals who become experts about parasitic viruses in Taco Bell food. Individuals who become experts when it comes to forestation mitigation. Except this time, it was much more deadly and much more serious when these individuals went out there touting a bunch of nonsense that they had no formal education on whatsoever, and tragically were just simply taking individuals like Fauci's word at face value.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us.
People who are incubators for every variant to come, walking around lawfully unvaccinated? That's psychotic.
For the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death. For yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm.
About this, in a world of threats and tyrants and terror, you know what our biggest enemy is in America? Our fellow Americans.
They are the ones that are propagating this outbreak.
Being frustrated that there is still a percentage of the population who are not vaccinated.
I wish that he would go further to restrict the activities of the unvaccinated.
Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
That 25% can cause a lot of damage, and they are.
If you're willing to walk among us unvaccinated, you are an enemy.
Well, it's my rights. Okay. But I don't care.
The pandemic of the unvaccinated.
Look, the only pandemic we have is among the unvaccinated. And they're killing people.
Freedom not to follow the facts, even if your freedom kills people? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of freedom do they really want?
We have a pandemic because of the unvaccinated, and they're sowing enormous confusion. The unvaccinated overcrowd our hospitals, are overrunning emergency rooms and intensive care units, leaving no room for someone with a heart attack or pancreatitis or cancer.
Shouldn't they have to pay more into the system because they are collapsing our health system? They're the ones in the ERs.
Require vaccination universally. Have the military run it. If you don't want to get vaccinated, you better be ready to prove your conscientious objector status in court.
Almost like it's going to be two Americas.
Morning, John Gonzo. I agree with you 100%. I would love to see all of those heads and celebrities, all of those people that were praising Fauci. I'd love to get them all together in a room and ask them, are you people sorry? Are you people at all ashamed for what you did? I doubt it, but I'd love to see him call them.
Let's go back to a few more comments from the Blaster line, 612-584-4565, if you want to leave us a blast. And let's go here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment.
Hey, John, yes, Fauci's career is over, but he's got a few extra $1 million in his pocket for it. I would love some local media, especially like an Alpha News, something, maybe even the American Experiment, sit down with some people that worked in the hospitals and the nursing homes, and they can tell you what they really had to deal with. It was awful. Make it a great day. Thanks for what you do.
Let me play another clip for you. This is the one that probably got some of the most attention during the Fauci hearing yesterday. Josh Hawley finally snapping in the middle of Fauci with his continued pleading of the fifth, talking about how he used his fame for profit, speaking to the friend of the show's comment of just how much money Anthony Fauci made in the middle of all of this.
You did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic, you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally, cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID? What were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Folkers says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award.
He had to break a record for the number of times he invoked the fifth, right?
Cash
it's got to be a record.
Award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
The one good thing out of this, if I ever did have to do a hearing, I've got the Fifth Amendment memorized now.
Federal employees so that you could go and get cash money. And the most hilarious part is that you weren't content to even dragoon them into applying for all of these cash awards. You then had them go out to the ethics agencies and ethics watchdogs and demand that you be able to get the money. That's right. We've got it in your emails. Your staff and employees on federal time, using federal resources, being paid with federal dollars, are soliciting cash for you. And then they're turning around and saying to the agency, we don't want just an answer. We want to get to yes, because Fauci wants the money. He wants it. We want to get to yes, and yes takes time. This is your chief of staff again, using federal email to pressure the agency's own ethics people so that you could get money, so that you could get rich. And it violated the law, didn't it, Dr. Fauci? Didn't it?
I bet he pleads the Fifth.
It violated the law, didn't it? It is a question. You can answer. Go ahead.
On the advice of
there it is. You know what? I'm always critical of these committee hearings. Okay. Because you don't really accomplish a lot. And the individuals that are usually attempting to be held accountable, there's very little accountability. these hearings would be a lot more effective if we weren't so fragmented in terms of how we go and receive all the information, because the clips go out there and the algorithms feed it to the individuals that are already watching all of this. I was just thinking, and it's never going to be the case, and it probably isn't even worth me bringing up, but in a time pre-internet and social media, you had opportunities for a vast majority of Americans to actually hear this commentary. So even if you have a situation like Anthony Fauci invoking the Fifth Amendment 111 times, at least a majority of the American public and those paying attention are seeing the totality of what is being questioned of him and the facts that are coming out. Unfortunately, so much of this, it gets chopped up, it gets disseminated online, but it ends up, again, just going to the algorithms of people that are already watching all of this, because there's really relevant information in what these members of Congress are attempting to go and do and holding Fauci accountable. We're going to switch gears here in just a moment, but I do want to go to one more blast on this topic here on the John Justice
Mike,
Show.
I'm up and Ely now. I will say that yes, Anthony Fauci, and I won't put the term doctor behind his name, is one of the most evil human beings in history. But he was simply the conduit and following orders from somebody much higher and much more hidden, and did what they told him to do. And he also enjoyed doing it.
Hour 2 here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment and AmericanExperiment.org. Remember, you can listen to the show. You already are, but you have multiple ways to do so. So tell your friends and family at AmericanExperiment.org, on the MixLR app, where you can also get caught up on the podcast. Those podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms. And you can watch the show on X at MN Think Tank, also on YouTube and Facebook on both the Center of the American Experiment pages and my personal John J.O.N. Justice pages as well. I am very pleased to welcome into the American Experiment studios endorsed Republican Senate candidate Adam Schwarzy. Good morning, Adam. How are we doing this morning, sir?
Hey, good morning, brother. Thanks for having me on your new show.
It's thank you so much for coming in. I greatly appreciate it. You guys have been hanging out here for a bit in the middle of going back over the hearing yesterday. Did you get a chance to take any of it in the middle of your campaigning?
We were just going over my brief this morning on the way over here. Just the 112 article fights of pleading the Fifth. I mean, that's insane.
Where was talk a little bit, I just had a curiosity. Talk a little bit about your experience. Where were you during COVID when the pandemic was occurring?
Well, after 18 and a half years of being the number one performer across every chain of command, I served in 10 years in the Marines, about 9 years in the Navy SEAL teams at that point. My career was ended during COVID. That was during the time when Biden was kicking out thousands of service members for not taking that experimental forced vaccination. So we're kicking out thousands of Navy SEALs, of Army Rangers, of pilots, of EOD officers. And what people don't realize is now under Trump 2.0, we're starting to welcome some of those people back into the military, but the military is a family. And if your family treats you poorly, nobody's coming back, essentially.
Right.
And what's really sad about that is the level of experience that we're kicking out of our ranks. You don't backfill somebody who's got 20 years of special operations experience. You can't backfill a pilot who's flown for 10 years. Even if after the COVID, you're like, okay, we screwed up. Let's try to get more people back in the military. You never can backfill that level of experience that you purged. And what does that mean? That means our national security is weakened. Our American is less lethal fighting force because we kicked out thousands of people that have great war fighting experience and made our country effective at national defense.
Boy, we've seen that similar commentary around the law enforcement in metropolitan areas where
Exactly.
people have been pushed out. The
That's
retirees are pushed out early, and they may be forced to have to go and bring in new recruits. But as you've said, they're not coming in with experience, certainly not the experience to deal with society as we are dealing with right now. Let me hang out there really quick with what you said in terms of your involvement in the military and leaving during COVID. And thank you, Adam Schwarzy, for your service. Can you talk a little bit about how that affected you personally? Like, as you're saying that, I'm reminded of on a much lesser scale, but being unceremoniously let go from my previous employer a month ago. I know that pit in your stomach, but I also understand that I chose to be in that industry and it comes with the territory. But for someone like yourself who's decided to go and serve this country, to protect and serve this country, and then to have that happen, can you talk a little bit about your personal experience when that happened?
Yeah, it's an utter betrayal. And it's a betrayal, not only, my personal self, but everything I've stood for, everything I fought for in America. That was an utter betrayal. Or I fought for democracy, and that's the most undemocratic things. And I don't like to use the Nazi terms. I hate when people can compare everything to Nazis because there's only one Nazi. But remember, we were forcing people to carry on vaccination cards during that time.
Yeah. I still have mine in my wallet, for crying out loud. Just only because I'm fearful. Like one day I'm going to need it for some reason, depending on what Democrat regime might take over. And I've just left it in there. To your point.
Yeah, it was a scary time when you look back. And what's really disappointing now is some of the people just don't understand how wrong they were yet. And if you don't understand how wrong you were, if you don't understand the history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
And we had some really scary times for American history there.
I have no expectation that Fauci is going to be held accountable. That being said, I mean, his career, is clearly over. He's never going to be able or be trusted in this position.
Thank God.
Again, right. Yeah, thank the good Lord Almighty. You know, it was very lucrative for him. I'm curious your thoughts, and then we'll dive into matters relating here to Minnesota and your campaign. But, when it comes to that level of accountability of individuals like that, and specifically these hearings that take place, I'm curious your view. These hearings end up being entertaining. They provide me the opportunity to play a lot of audio on the show, but they don't accomplish a whole heck of a lot. I'm just curious your take on, is there a better way to hold these individuals accountable beyond these types of hearings that apparently go, that seem to go nowhere? And I'll just add, I know that Fauci has a pardon, and Trump has said that it's going to be near impossible to overturn that. I'm just curious your thoughts, Adam Schwarzy, on the political process when we try to hold these people accountable.
I mean, that's the so what, is there is no accountability. And I'm so angry that Biden gave a blanket pardon to thousands of people using the auto pen on his last few days of the presidency. But as somebody who's traveled the state, I've been campaigning longer now than anybody who's running for statewide office this cycle. As I traverse the state, people are pissed off, and they don't see accountability. And frankly, I don't see it either. The American people and hardworking Midwesterners, Minnesotans are sick of the rules for thee, but not for me. For this D.C. establishment on both sides of the aisle, frankly, that are beyond reproach, are never actually held accountable. And I'm with them. I think this is it's a cute little song and dance to get some viral videos, but nobody is arrested. Nobody's put behind bars in the Walz administration in Minnesota right now. Nobody's been fired from the Walz administration for what happened from all the fraud until now. Nobody's been in prison yet. And when I get to the United States Senate, I'm limited in the powers with the power of the subpoena. But I'm not going to let this rest as a cool little fringe Instagram clip or social media clip. I'm going to make sure that people are arrested for these transgressions.
Talking with Republican Senate candidate Adam Schwarzy here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. I'm glad that we have a justice system set up the way that it is, wherein it is relatively difficult. You have to have the evidence to hold somebody accountable, right? And that's important because you don't want any party in power to abuse the justice system, even though it has been, and go and punish individuals who may not have the evidence necessary for them to receive that punishment. But unfortunately, Adam, and I think you're speaking to this, but from my view, it seems as if we end up going so far and actually going and presenting the evidence and getting it right there where we can go and prosecute somebody. But when it comes to people in D.C., they hit a wall and it just stops. It's like you seem
by
like
design.
All the evidence is there. We can get them. And then suddenly the powers that be, decide, nope, we can't do that. And the same thing happens. And I'll stop with my little filibuster here. But the same thing that happens when we're going to talk about the SAVE Act. And the same thing happens with the SAVE Act, though. It's like we're right there. we're right there. And what do we end up with? A couple of squishy Republicans who, for whatever personal reasons or vendetta against Trump, decide that they don't want to go and take the final step to get the thing passed. And the same thing, in my view, occurs within our justice system in D.C. as well.
I think there's two things. There's one, I think that the American people are finally getting wise that they have all these great little snippets on the socials, but then they're all having drinks together afterwards. They're all playing cigars, having cigars. It's all for show to keep the American people occupied, and people are sick of it. They're starting to see through it because, again, nobody's been arrested, even in Minnesota. They know that everybody just goes and has their cocktails, and this is all just a circus for the American people. But Fauci got rich, hasn't been accountable. All these people, the Walz administration, right now, they're still doing all the same things that they did when they defrauded Minnesotan taxpayers of $9 to $19 billion, and nobody's yet been held accountable.
Yeah.
Except for some of the federal investigations.
Yeah.
With the SAVE Act, it's truly, this is near and dear to my heart, as I'm sure we'll probably talk about my own personal election integrity.
We're going to get into it.
But this is truly just weak leadership. I mean, and when people ask me, why am I running for U.S. Senate? Why would you want to run for Senate? It's gross. Politics is disgusting. It's corrupted. Because we don't have people that actually have qualifications right now to run and have a backbone to do the work needed when they get to U.S. Senate. And I certainly have qualifications to lead on a bunch of different committees, unlike my primary opponents. And I'm going to actually do the work. I'm going to fight to do the work. And the Save America Act is the number one most important piece of legislature, not for President Trump, not for Republicans, but for the American people. As you said, 87% of America wants this to get done, but they're taking it to the line and then stopping. It's because they're weak.
We have questions that have been rolling in to the Blaster line, 612-584-4565 for our guest. Again, Republican Senate candidate Adam Schwarzy, also a former member of the military here on the Blaster line, has a question for you, Adam.
Good morning, Bob from Lake Elmo. Question for Adam. Hey, I'm a fellow retired Navy submariner intel officer. Thanks for your service. Question for you. Where are you at on DOGE? And if you're a senator, are you going to pick up on the DOGE effort and keep going and bring some of this federal spending down, specifically the federal wage?
It's pretty interesting when you look at some of the unintended consequences of DOGE shutting down, like USAID, and suddenly now certain things aren't taking place like they used to. Like we have a lot fewer riots taking place after that. But what are your thoughts on DOGE? Should it be brought back? Is that something you would focus on as senator here from Minnesota?
Yeah, first off, thanks for the call in, my fellow underwater warrior there, brother. My last 7 years, I was a naval special warfare undersea, so a lot of time playing with you guys in the deep sea boats, but God bless you. Yes, DOGE, we saved, I think, at the end of DOGE, which was not effective as it needed to be because of the pushback from Congress and the U.S. Senate. It could have been orders of magnitude in its effectiveness. It's still, I think it was $1,300 to every single taxpayer in the entire country. Who in their daggone right mind would not want $1,300 in their wallet right now?
Right.
So DOGE is a great thing. We could have some discussions about the process of which DOGE did its work. But when you have $39 trillion of deficit spending, $1.8 trillion every single year tacked onto that, you need to take aggressive cuts. So I was 100% supportive behind the spirit of what he was doing. And I think we need to continue to do that within the federal government. There's not any department of the federal government, including the military, by the way, that can't look to have cuts or make efficiencies. And a great example of that is, I think, the VA. The VA has increased its efficiency output within the first 100 days of Secretary Collins. They saw over 100,000 additional patients than what the Biden were seeing. So the service members were getting more treatment, and they were still saving dollars. And the best way I think that DOGE could really do more damage is fraud. Again, Minnesotans, we have $9 to $19 billion of fraud within our state. It's trillions of dollars on the federal side. We should be utilizing AI. We should be utilizing nonpartisan commissions, because I don't give a crap if it's Republicans or Democrats who get the credit, but DOGE was utilizing AI to lean into the fraud, and that's something that across the board we should want to stop, is fraud, and that's trillions of dollars in total. So yes, DOGE, bottom line, DOGE is a good thing.
Coordinating with, I know we were coordinated to have you on the show today, Adam. I know you're really busy out on the campaign trail. As we dive into, I know you had a press conference yesterday. going back to some voting issues that took place back in 2012. I want to talk about that. But just briefly before we do, how has the campaign been going? And I had a question that rolled in. I won't play the blast because the easy one. They were curious if you were going to be up at Farm Fest next week.
Yep, I will be Farm Fest. Farm Fest is kind of the last Super Bowl. I've been planning for Farm Fest for the last 3 weeks. I was up in all the farms in northeastern, northwestern Minnesota 2 weeks ago, and then the last week and a half now I'm traveling between the cities down to the farms in the southwestern part of greater Minnesota, and it's great. The air is better, the people are different. I love being out in greater Minnesota, but bottom line is, yes, we'll have a booth at Farm Fest and some other events as well.
How has the campaign been going? And the question that I love to ask candidates, I'm sure fraud, and election integrity has been a part of it. But what are you hearing when you talk with a potential voter? What's top of their mind right now as you're talking with potential voters?
Almost verbatim what we had started off the show with is people are angry in Minnesota about the fraud and how there's been no actual accountability. And that's going to be the midterm election in Minnesota is we need to hold these people accountable, and I'm not going to rest until people are actually in jail. I don't give a crap about these cool sound bites that play good on radio and news and things. Like, we need to actually arrest people.
So tell us what happened. I'm looking at a version here from Alpha News. You're calling for election security measures after a voter fraud that involved somebody taking your name, casting a ballot in your name back in 2012. So tell us what happened with this.
Yeah. Essentially, yesterday we were able to prove in front of the public that we have a verifiable evidence, two forms of evidence that prove that there is an election integrity fraudulent process in Minnesota right now. And what's scary is the more we think about it, this could be a really big deal that's beyond just a single scope, one for one. But here's what we do know right now is, like, right now on this, I brought into your studio this morning, I have 2 official government documents. One of them has to be falsified because I have my government military orders from the United States military saying, hey, you are detaching from the University of Minnesota when you commission. You're going to go start Navy SEAL training in June of 2012. And I graduated in December of 2012. So really important because the last part of SEAL training, I was up in a mountain off the coast of California and then on an island. You're not going home at night to vote in person in a November election, right?
Sure.
So physically impossible, right? And yet right here from the Secretary of State's office, from their chief legal counsel, is my record where in 2012, I voted in person for the presidential election. So just like the fraud that was decades old, the voter fraud is decades old. Now here's the really scary part. Since 2009, by design, the Minnesota Secretary of State's office has been removing the transparency within our elections. So as Johnny Q citizen, you can't go back and just look at your voter record right now, and an independent an analyst can't go back and look at your voter record. You have to, ironically, go in with your ID to request a record of your voting. So it's not public information. Who controls all the election information? The Minnesota Secretary of State's office only. Who knows when military troops are getting deployed, like National Guard units from the Minnesota? The Minnesota government leadership, Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, Secretary of State Steve Simon. How much are our statewide elections actually won or lost by? It was a couple thousand for the last auditor vote. It was 8,000 for the last attorney general vote. What am I saying? I'm saying that if a battalion or a division or a National Guard unit goes overseas, the government in Minnesota knows that these service members are going overseas. They could absolutely be pulling levers like they did for me in 2012, cast a vote for an in-person vote, and nobody would know about it because there's no oversight, there's no transparency, and there's no accountability in how these votes are being cast.
So if I was serving, and this is probably a given, but I'm going to say it anyways, if I was serving in the military at any point in time during an election and I was off somewhere, it would behoove me to go and check to see whether or not a vote was cast in my name, right? I mean, because
that's what we're doing right now. People are coming back to us saying, oh my God, I was in Afghanistan for the last 20 years. There's votes for me too. So other people are starting to come forward, and you can go to my socials, and we're going to make a video today. Please reach out to my website because we have volunteers now that are volunteered to join our team to say, hey, when you have veterans reach out, we will walk them through the process of sequestering their voter record. But it's not a single case. It just happened to break that because how many of your viewers probably actually going like, oh, I'm going to go and look up what I voted for 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Nobody does that.
No.
And you know who especially doesn't do that? veterans because we're damn busy. We don't have time to go. We're actually fighting for America.
How did you come across this?
The only reason I knew about it is because I was on a media interview that we were talking about my own voter record, and I said no, I've been deployed. I've been in the military my whole career. 2024 was the first time I voted, and they did like a fact check in real time. It was actually the Star Tribune. He's like, well, we have on our own independent analysis that you voted in 2012. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I think about it like, oh my God, I was in SEAL training then. So that started like the month-long process. Took a month to get my records from the Department of State or the Secretary of State's office.
So that's comical on a number of different reasons, because you got Steve Grove running the Star Tribune. He's chummy with Governor Dim Walz.
He's on a commission.
The paper in and of itself is just an extension. It's an arm of the DFL.
Yeah.
So they probably thought that they were getting you in a gotcha moment, wherein they were actually potentially exposing a much larger issue. I love it when it happens like that.
Yeah.
But
it's
amazing.
really scary when people think about how there's no oversight and thousands of our service members' votes could be used while they're deployed and nobody would know.
Well, and if this ends up being a larger systemic issue, I mean, more than likely, it's not just happening here. I mean, I know this is where your head is at, but I'm just extrapolating out.
Yeah.
We're going back to the lonely highway theory on the show that I deploy. If you get busted speeding on a lonely highway the first time, you're telling the cop, I've never done this before, when the reality is, now you've probably been speeding every single time. So if this ends up being something wherein, a large number of the members of our military have had their vote falsely cast stolen while they were out serving, this could be a major issue, nationwide. So where do you go from here? I'm assuming you've reached out to the Secretary of State's office. What kind of responses you've received so far?
So we contacted them on July 2nd and submitted the actual form. They said it would take 10 days to get whatever evidence they had. And then 22 days later, they responded back. This is comic. We don't like the signature that you used on your form. Can you get online and verify with your ID? So I had to get online on a video in person. So in person with ID to get my voter record. Imagine if only on the day of election, somebody in person with an ID had actually casted a vote. Like the Save America Act, right? Weird. If we, you can't make this up.
No, you can't make it up.
But seriously, this is why regardless of this election, I'm not going to let go of this issue. And if I can be a conduit to help get the Save America Act passed, as somebody who's literally sacrificed fighting for democracy all around the world, elections are one of the beautiful things that I always thought about America that we had. I thought we had free, fair, and transparent elections. It's become abundantly clear we do not, which pains me to even say that. And it's not just my own case right now. If you look at in New Jersey, we just found out 6,600 people were registered electronically. Hundreds of illegal non-U.S. citizens votes were like, we need to secure our elections. And again, this is not a Republican talking point. I fought for America my whole life, not Republican talking points. We need to save our country, and that starts with securing our elections.
Talking with endorsed Republican Senate candidate Adam Schwarzy, as I've been working through my commentary regarding how the inability to get the Save America Act passed, this thought came into my head that I hadn't thought about it regarding that issue, and I suddenly realized, those too many individuals in D.C. do not want true public voter representation in this country, right? If we shore up our election integrity, right, to the best of our ability, in the same way that President Donald Trump has gone and provided security at our borders to the best of our ability and stopped the influx of those coming in illegally, much in the same way Republicans and Democrats far too long have used that as a political football and didn't want border security or immigration security. But the same thing rings true when it comes to our voter integrity. There's too many individuals on both sides of the aisle in D.C. that are too afraid to actually hand over the decision-making to America. They want the power over the people and the power to control them. Because I think we all have an understanding, Republicans certainly, but Democrats as well, that if we actually shored up our election integrity, the outcome of our elections across the country would be dramatically different than they are right now. And there's too many Republicans that feel the same way. And that has got to change, Adam.
Well, I mean, you're 100% right. If you look at my race specifically, there is an us versus them, the outsiders versus the D.C. establishment. Thank God, for the most part, in this midterm election cycle, the outsiders are winning, the political outsiders. And in my race, let's just be honest, Michelle Tafoya was endorsed by two people Tim Scott and his executive director at the NRC, where I was endorsed by thousands of Minnesotans at the endorsing convention. I've gotten over 100 Minnesota endorsed candidates and current legislators. I'm actually from Minnesota, but DC is giving her $3 million and pushing her campaign, but she won't actually go. She won't debate, which is historic. She won't do local press, local news. All they do is they keep her on Fox News. And this is also election integrity as I see it. It's the D.C. establishment because they want somebody else that they can control. Do you think Michelle Tafoya is going to fight to pass the Save America Act? Absolutely not. Where that's going to be, if I don't even win this election, regardless of whether or not, I'm going to fight to pass that daggone thing the rest of my life. And there really is, as you're saying, it stems from power. The D.C. apparatus just wants more of the D.C. apparatus, the safe comfort, the do-nothings, the same people that won't prosecute Fauci, the same people that are sitting on the Save America Act. They just want people that they can control for the same thing that Fauci's in there for money and power. Like they all get famous, they all get powerful. Yeah. It's like we're no longer. We were talking about this again on the way up here during the debrief this morning. We're no longer electing people with qualifications anymore. It's purely name ID and how can you get more power and how can you just become more of the DC bro code, the bro club. And it's really sad because that's how our country fails. How did Rome fall? Rome didn't fall because and that's like the last closest example to America. Nothing's as good as America. We are truly a city on a hill, American exceptionalism. But Rome was kind of the last worldwide hegemon before America, and it didn't crumble because a larger land army came in or a deeper blue water navy. It had civic discourse that turned violent, like we're seeing it now with Charlie Kirk, all these political assassinations, even in Minnesota, political assassinations, and then we had a divided base. Political corruption, which, again, like you said earlier, both sides of the aisle, this political corruption runs very deep. And lastly, it overspent. And we have $39 trillion of deficit spending, $1.8 trillion every year. Most people can't even fathom those highs of numbers. We will fall because of our spending, just like Rome did, unless we start electing people who actually have qualifications and are going to fight to do the things that made our country great in the first place.
Before we wrap up our conversation with Republican Senate candidate Adam Schwarze, and I have a clip that I'll share, speaking of the Fauci hearing that we sort of started the conversation off on from Tulsi Gabbard that everybody needs to hear. So I'll be sharing that here in just a moment. Let's wrap up on this. At AmericanExperiment.org, they've put forward the challenges that are facing Minnesota, this sort of a multi-point look at what is taking place here. These are irrefutable facts. First off, you have the fact that some 68% of Minnesotans don't believe our state is doing well. That's just a polling, right? But there's a reason for that. You have, and here's what we'll do. I'm going to list off these various concerns that we're dealing with. And Adam Schwarze, you can choose your own adventure. You pick which one off this list here that you want to comment on.
I like those books from a kid.
As we
choose your adventure stories.
Choose your own commentary adventures. So we have kids in Mississippi can read better than kids in Minnesota. Minnesota is now a below average state economically. 55% of Minnesota students can't do math at a grade level. Minnesota taxes small businesses more than any other state. And Minnesota's government let fraudsters steal over $9 billion. There are data points attached to all of this at AmericanExperiment.org. But of those challenges we're facing, which one would you like to comment on?
Can I choose my adventure and go through the education briefly because it's more a state issue, but then finish with the fraud?
Go for it.
So when I grew up here in Bloomington, Minnesota, we were one of the top 5 best public education states in the country, and we were middle-of-the-road taxes. For national taxes. Now, reading and writing is better in Tennessee than in Minnesota. I don't think any of our viewers think that Tennessee is the bastion of public education. At the same time, we are now one of the top 5 taxed states in the country. And that's really sad that we were the bastion of what it looked like to have a great education state, and now we've fallen under one-party rule, under Democrat rule. Terrible, terrible, terrible. The Walz administration likes to talk about how in 2025 we had the highest amount of graduating classes ever in the history of the state of Minnesota. Problem is, at the same time we had the highest graduation rate, we had the lowest reading and writing scores ever in the history. It's because we're just pushing kids through.
Yeah.
So it's really, really sad stats. But that's state issue, but as somebody who values education, that's a really sad stat. The fraud. $9 to $19 billion. This is why it matters for me running for U.S. Senate. The majority of that was federal fraud dollars. And still, nobody has been arrested. Not one person in the government has been arrested. I'm not going to let this go. I'm going to make sure that I want to work with every single federal agency. I'm going to use the power of the subpoena until we actually get people arrested, not increase sound bites.
Adam Schwarzy, thank you so much for coming in this morning. Again, endorsed Republican Senate candidate. Where would you like people to go to find out where you're going to be and what's been going on with your campaign?
Thanks, brother. Up on all the accounts, X's, Facebook, Schwarzy4Senate.com. And if you're a veteran, please connect to us on Schwarzy4Senate. There's a contact tab. If you just say, hey, veteran, pull up voting record, whatever you send, just let us know that you're a veteran. I've got people on standby so we can look at your voting records, because sadly this could be a very big deal. Any vote stolen is a big deal, but when we're talking about our statewide elections are a couple thousand. We've had county and Minnesota House elections that are won by 20 votes. So if I can find 20 veterans that had their vote stolen in a county, that's a big deal. So please, elections matter. Thanks for having me on your show today, Justice.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
and thank you so much for coming in, and keep the show and keep me posted on what you guys find out regarding just how many of those veterans come forward, because that could be a massive deal. And I'll add this real quick, and if you want to comment, you can, and then I'll cut you loose. It makes me wonder what other anomalies doing that thing with my fingers have we not discovered, in terms of potential voter fraud? Because this is one that I certainly wouldn't have ever thought of prior to you discovering it, which raises that question of, if there is shenanigans going on, well, what else is taking place that we're not aware of?
I am in the same place. I never in a million years thought that I would be sitting talking about how America doesn't have free, fair, and transparent elections with verifiable proof that, and we just don't. So what is we haven't had a true investigation, so we don't know how big the scope is. But commonsensically, fraud doesn't happen in a vacuum. All these crime doesn't happen in a vacuum.
Right.
If you're doing fraud crime, you're doing if you're speeding, you're probably doing other things too, right? Yep. So, but thank you for the opportunity to highlight this. I will keep you informed. And I don't bet against America. I hope that somehow this is a very limited, small case. I don't see it that way. What are the chances that the guy running for U.S. Senate, who's a military guy who just happened to have his voter records pulled, is the one guy that this is happening to?
Very, very low.
Yeah.
All right. Great to see you both. Adam, thank you so much for the time, and continue good luck in your campaign. We'll talk again real soon.
Thanks, brother. God bless.
Keeping with, so I want to play this Tulsi Gabbard clip, but first off, I do have some audio of Senate Majority Leader John Thune. He did announce yesterday that he will only call off the August recess for the Save America Act if he can obtain 50 votes for the budget reconciliation bill, assuming that the Save Act is attached. It's a little hard to hear the question ahead of time, but you will be able to hear Senate Majority Leader John Thune in this clip here on the John Justice Show.
I'm for anything that we can do to get the Save America Act passed. The question I always ask is, what is your picture of victory at the end? What is the end game here? And if, in fact, staying here for the month of August means that we assume at some point there are going to be 10 Democrats that cross over and vote for the Save America Act, I think we can stay here till Christmas. That's not going to happen. And the other thing I would say about that is that there aren't going to be 50 votes to get rid of the legislative filibuster. So if budget reconciliation is a path forward, if we conclude that there is actually a chance to get an outcome or a result there, I'm open to do it. And I think all of our colleagues would be open to staying around here if that were true. But I think that we have to see, first of all, that can be proven to be the case. And but I don't think, having a Congress and Senate sitting around here for the month of August in quorum calls or having to vote on Democrat amendments is probably a good use of anybody's time. So we will see and see where the conversation goes. Yeah.
Hey, John. About the thing about voters, I had a similar problem getting my dad off the voter rolls when he passed away from cancer. And along with the conversation, when you say those small votes don't count, remember, 400 votes gave us Senator Al Franken. Senator Al Franken gave a supermajority, which gave us Obamacare. It matters, people.
Yeah, it absolutely matters. And this is where I get so frustrated when it comes to the elections here in Minnesota, because it's worth reminding everybody that the DFL's not winning in these massive mandate victories. They're not winning by these wide, massive margins. They're winning, like the blast said, they're winning, by very small margins. It's like Minnesota is poised to go and elect proper conservative representation that is truly representative of a majority of this great state. How much of that is potential fraud that's keeping that from happening? That's the $1 million question. We're so close. Which is why I get so discouraged when you see so much of this infighting taking place. And we'll get to some of this. I have a couple of stories this morning of the war of words going back and forth between the Demuth campaign and the Lindell campaign. Because Republicans can absolutely win elections here, but you've got to make sure that you stay involved, you stay engaged, and you get as many people out to vote as possible. And yes, even if your candidate doesn't end up being victorious in the primary coming up, you still need to go and back those candidates and coalesce behind the individuals who are, even if they're not Republicans that you went and supported. Because I can tell you, and I hope you realize this, they're still better off than the options are. Much, much better off than the options are. 612-584-4565. That is the line. If you want to leave us a blast at any point throughout the show this morning, you can also email john.justice, it's Jon, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. All right, let's go back just for a moment. It's a really great clip. We'll wrap up the conversation this morning regarding the Anthony Fauci hearing yesterday. But Tulsi Gabbard, making her way out of the Trump administration, watched the hearing yesterday and then posted this online. One of the things that I most appreciate about Tulsi is that she's one of those individuals who I firmly believe is genuine and authentic in her commentary and has a lot of relevant things to share after watching that hearing yesterday. Here it is on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment.
Before the COVID pandemic, Dr. Fauci, as head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, provided millions in U.S. taxpayer dollars to fund dangerous gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, work which is now widely viewed as the source of the unintentional lab leak that sparked the pandemic. Now, in support of President Trump's maximum transparency mandate, today, on my final day as Director of National Intelligence, I'm releasing never-before-seen communications and documents that expose exactly how Fauci worked with politicized career leadership in the intelligence community to suppress the truth about his actions, the virus's lab leak origins, and his role in directing U.S. funding for this dangerous research that caused immeasurable harm and countless lost lives. Now, these documents expose Fauci's direct role in influencing and manipulating IC assessments on COVID-19 and how Fauci lied to Congress in 2024 when under oath he denied knowledge of or participation in discussions with intelligence officials about viral research. We also received testimony from multiple intelligence community whistleblowers who reported retaliation for challenging the intelligence community's manipulation of intelligence on the virus's origins, once again revealing a clear pattern of suppressing dissent, silencing critics, and burying the truth. Dr. Fauci's close relationships with the intelligence community enabled him to assume three key roles that shield him from scrutiny. First, Dr. Fauci funded dangerous gain-of-function coronavirus research linked to Big Pharma and their pursuit of universal vaccines worth trillions of dollars. Second, Dr. Fauci was the behind-the-scenes advisor who, alongside his hand-picked so-called experts, pushed the intelligence community to endorse a natural animal origin to hide his dangerous gain-of-function research that he funded using taxpayer dollars, all of this in a deliberate attempt to cover up the truth and shift the blame and attention away from Fauci's own actions. Third, Dr. Fauci became the nation's pandemic pundit and he publicly pushed lies, disinformation, and censorship using every platform available. Now, according to hundreds of reviewed emails, which are included in this release, the intelligence community almost always incorporated Fauci's recommendations. He promoted a fraudulent paper whose publication he helped prompt as legitimate information for intelligence community consideration. Senior analysts praised Dr. Fauci not as a policymaker, but as what they called an unbiased guide to the real coronavirus experts, while deliberately ignoring experts who might dissent from Fauci's narratives. Now, Fauci didn't stop there. He blatantly lied to Congress under oath during his 2024 testimony to the House Select Subcommittee on the Coronavirus Pandemic, denying that he ever spoke to any intelligence agency about COVID. Now, the correspondence I'm releasing today directly contradicts his sworn testimony. Now, we received statements from multiple whistleblowers revealing that the intelligence analysts who dared to challenge Dr. Fauci's COVID origin conclusions faced threats of retaliation, marginalization, and many suffered career setbacks. For example, a contractor was terminated just days after coming forward to ODNI as a whistleblower. Another example, those who advocated for the lab leak hypothesis or expressed dissenting views were reminded by their managers that leadership would determine which analysts would be promoted and which would not. The message was clear: go along or be punished. Senior leaders also sought to undermine whistleblowers by removing anonymity, which is required in the whistleblower process, as they made their complaints, and also insisting that their managers or attorneys be present during ODNI meetings where these whistleblowers were coming forward with their testimony, obviously creating an atmosphere of intimidation. The COVID pandemic caused tremendous hardship and pain for millions of our fellow Americans and countless people around the world. Now, after years of lies and censorship and cover-ups, the American people deserve transparency, truth, and accountability.
Yep.
The tactics that were used to hide the truth are straight from the deep state playbook. Politicized self-serving leaders like Dr. Fauci covered up their own wrongdoing and abuses of power, manipulated intelligence, lied to Congress, and undermined a duly elected president by restricting his access to the vital facts he needed to keep the country safe. It's time you know the truth.
Hey, good morning, John. It's kind of funny. I mean, nothing's going to happen to Fauci, but when Senator Josh Hawley asked Dr. Fauci, what color was the carpet in front of you, he actually looked and then proceeded to take the fifth. So, I don't know. It's sad, man. I wish there was some accountability. I've been sitting here waiting for a long time for any shoe to drop, for any of these people to be held accountable, and nothing is going to happen, and I'm not surprised.
Well, it's like I said to our guest, Adam Schwarzy. I'm with you, but I also appreciate the way the justice system works in that it is difficult to go and hold people accountable, because if it's not, then you're going to see reprisals take place by political parties looking to punish their ideological opponents. And at the same time, these individuals who we are wanting to see be held accountable are very savvy in what they do. And they make it incredibly difficult to go and hold them accountable. There was a previous blast that came in that hit the nail on the head. One, he did make a lot of money, but secondly, ultimately, he's going to have to face that judgment. And I know that that's not reassuring for a lot of individuals that want to see people like Anthony Fauci, held accountable now, but it is the reality. On top of the fact that Anthony Fauci's career, despite him having a lot of money and his celebrity status, is pretty much up in smoke. I mean, he still will be adored by those on the left who decry anybody that wants to speak any ill whatsoever towards Fauci. But you know what? Screw them. I don't care. The clips that were going around ahead of the hearing yesterday of just the fawning over this guy. There was an audio clip that I grabbed yesterday, and I failed to go and load it. It was fun because if you watch the video stream yesterday, there's a moment where I'm over here, like I'm talking and I'm doing commentary, and I'm like, because I couldn't find the clip that I was looking for, but it was Julia Roberts on a Zoom call in the middle of COVID, who had the opportunity to go and talk with Anthony Fauci. And like he shows up on the screen and she's, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's you. First off, I don't think there's not much genuine coming from actresses like that. I mean, I like Julia Roberts. I was a Mystic Pizza fan. Enjoy that film. Isaac, do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
No.
Okay. It's a 90s movie. It was one of Julia Roberts' first films where she is part of she has a handful of sisters, and they're living in either Maine or Vermont, and they run a pizza restaurant. And then it's kind of a Pretty in Pink story, which you also probably haven't watched.
Nope.
But wherein there's a rich guy that comes to town, and he finds the Julia Roberts character in Mystic Pizza, rather fetching. And then you have the dynamic of a small town,
it's a Hallmark movie.
Low income. Before Hallmark movies were Hallmark movies.
Fair enough.
The low income girl falls for the rich guy who can't be trusted because he's rich, and chaos and shenanigans ensue.
Wow.
That being said, her fawning over Anthony Fauci in that clip was kind of gross, if we're being honest. Let's go talk to Chad.
Hey, John, this is Chad from Boca. I just find it funny that all these people talking about vaccinations.
Chad, I'm going to stop here. Hopefully you can find out. I really appreciate your commentary, but for whatever reason, your comments coming through on the blaster line, they're too muddled. So hopefully you can find a way to clean those up. What he said, though, was he finds it funny that all these people talking about vaccinations when vaccination is supposed to keep people getting sick from the virus, but yet these people that took their jab for getting sick from the virus, they need to apologize. I have a good one. By the way, when you leave a blast, I can see the commentary here. When you call 612-584-4565, you leave your message. You just press pound at the end. It's that simple. And then I'm able to go and play your comments back on the show, and I can see your transcript if by chance, as Chad had shown, the audio quality isn't the greatest. Let's go back to the blaster line here.
Good morning, John. Glad to have you back on the air. About Anthony Fauci, the science. I'm not surprised that he doesn't have any answers or won't have any answers. But in his diary, the cringy pile of garbage that was, he admitted he knew it came from a lab, and he admitted he knew he was doing wrong. So screw that guy. Just hanging out.
Thank you so much for the blast. Again, if you want to leave us a blast on the blaster line, 612-584-4565, and you can blast at me. Friend of the show, Daniel Savage, who's kind of the show's continuity director. Mystic Pizza was 1988. Ooh. Well, I thought it was early 90s. So I guess it's not that early 90s. It is 88, and I'm getting old. 88 was a big year for me. I just want to point that out. 15 years old, going on 16. That was a big year.
You're a big shot.
Yeah, well, yeah. I was coming of age.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Julia Roberts and her sisters in that film. Okay. All right. Maybe I want to go to the Upper East Coast, hang out at a pizza place, long before I met my wife. Of course. That's just a given.
Right.
1988. I was a very, very, very young lad. Let's go back to the blaster line this morning on the show.
John, I would actually like to know, I don't think Anthony Fauci is totally protected from any prosecution.
He got cut off here. No, and I know they're looking. I know that Rand Paul is looking at contempt of court charges on Anthony Fauci. So it's not to say that he won't be held accountable. It's just to say that it is difficult to go and hold people accountable. I had a comment that rolled into the blaster line regarding Senate candidate Adam Schwarzy, who joined us at the beginning part of the hour here on the John Justice Show presented by American Experiment. Let's go back to the blaster line this morning.
Hey, John, thanks for having Adam on. I was on the Michelle Tafoya train because I hadn't seen, heard, knew nothing about this guy when the men got endorsed him. They are the worst at marketing their candidates, and they really need to get the word out on this guy. He should do one of those debates like Scott Jensen did with an empty podium if she's refusing, just to gain some attention to him, because I think he would be a great candidate. I wasn't going to vote for him in the primary, but now I will. Thanks for having him again. Great show for now. So,
thank you so much for that. Yeah, no, and just so we're clear, it's a great show so far. Great show so far. She was close. It's okay. It was there. She was there in spirit. She was there. She was absolutely there in spirit. All right. Let's go here. We were talking fraud a moment ago. I had a couple of stories here that I haven't had a chance to dive into yet, and now seems relevant. We will get back to the demisexual, apparently, Kahuli Her, who is the most randiest mayor in all of America.
Someone left a comment yesterday that said it was a classic he said, her said situation.
Ah! The articles are very confusing when you're talking about it still, with her and her and, yeah. Does the word Randy have any? Does it have any effect on you at all? Like, have you heard that term before?
No.
No. Okay, it just means horny.
Oh.
It's just it's a more delicate way of saying it. It's actually very Austin Powers. This is Randy, baby.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. I guess I can just say horny now on the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. An F-bomb dropped earlier, so who knows, right?
It's the Wild West.
Makes me feel. Yeah, I know, right? And I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, I forgot. We're totally safe. Matt Dean, AmericanExperiment.org, has this piece. Speaking of fraud, Governor Tim Walz' baffling response to the latest federal deferral of $199 million in Medicaid payments only make things worse for the state, trying to go a day without reminding the rest of the country that crooks steal our lunch money. In a post on X, Walz responded to the latest withhold of federal funds. And the Trump administration came out and said they were withholding funds to various states that were not cooperating with the demands of the White House on a number of different issues, including fraud and those that won't go and turn over their voter rolls. In this case, in the post by Governor Tim Walz, he said, it isn't about fraud. It's about cutting your health care so that Trump can afford the tax cuts he gave to billionaires. God, he's such a hack. I'm so glad he's going away. As H.L. Menchkin might have said, when they say it's not about the fraud, it's about the fraud. I may have said that guy's last name wrongly. Unfamiliar with it. I like the quote, though. When they say it's not about the fraud, it's about the fraud. Governor Walz either believes that fraud is not real or, for whatever reason, that it's not worth stopping. Trump wants better fraud checks before questionable invoices. Minnesota is a land of 10,000 sketchy invoices right now, writes Matt Dean. So it makes sense that our Medicaid requests are getting audited for a third time this year. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Administrator head, Dr. Mehmet Oz, made it clear that his intent is not to root out fraud by preventing it in the first place. That his intent is to root out fraud by preventing it in the first place. Rather than pay and chase, doing that thing with my fingers, pay and chase money to fraudsters, only to find the money is spent by the time the crooks get caught, which we keep seeing happen over and over again. Oz is using investigators, AI, and common sense to identify and stop payment for funny-looking requests. CMS also reviewed Medicaid claims in 14 high-risk services in Minnesota. The review identified claims that require additional documentation, including expenditures linked to providers flagged through the program integrity reviews, and other claims with potential eligibility or billing concerns. CMS is deferring approximately $199 million in federal Medicaid payments while that review continues. Now, the same pattern has played out for years, Matt Dean goes on to say. Federal prosecutors have investigated providers, massive schemes involving autism services, housing stabilization, and related programs with loss amounts in tens of hundreds of millions. Walz's own Department of Human Services, under federal pressure, recently disenrolled more than 3,000 high-risk Medicaid providers after a revalidation process. Those are not Republican talking points. They are documented facts. Dr. Oz is right. The old pay and chase model puts the crooks on easy street. It pays suspicious claims first, then spends years trying to claw back the money if it can be found at all. That approach has failed Minnesota taxpayers and legitimate recipients who rely on these programs, stopping questionable payments up front and demanding documentation and holding states accountable for federal dollars they spend is not radical. It's a basic fiscal responsibility. You know, but the problem here is that there's common ground to be found in all of this, but much like we were talking about when it comes to holding people accountable, it just gets stopped every single time. Because the moment that this is looked at as a political issue that benefits one side or the other, the divisions are formed, people dig their heels in, and suddenly now common ground that could have been found there, it's gone out the window. But remember, everybody, as Peggy Flanagan said, Governor Tim Walz, has done the most when it comes to combating fraud. I don't have the clip, but remember, he was going to ride Republicans harder than they've ever been ridden. So far, I've seen no riding whatsoever from Governor Tim Walz. One more here. And then we're going to move over to the Kahuli-Hur situation and the war of words that has been taking place between the Lisa Damuth and Mike Lindell campaign. But this comes out of Alpha News, courtesy of College Fix. New federal limits on graduate loans are foolish and harmful, and this is according to Minnesota Attorney General Thief Ellison. But Minnesota is actually implementing similar restrictions through its new loan program. So Minnesota is part of a multi-state lawsuit against the Department of Education for limiting graduate loans for certain degrees. Effective on the 1st of this month, graduate students could borrow $20,500 per year unless they are in a professional degree program in which they can borrow up to $50,000 per year. Pretty generous. The Department of Education classified certain programs as professional, such as medicine or dentistry. I don't think my job falls into that category as we enter into hour 3 on the show. I have no idea why the Trump administration would unlawfully limit access to federal student loans for people studying to become a physical therapist or physician assistants, Ellison stated when Minnesota joined the lawsuit. He called the regulation unlawful, foolish, and harmful. In late June, a judge gave a limited victory to challengers requiring the Department of Education to reconsider how it classified degrees. The ruling did not remove the limits overall. Now, regardless of how the legal challenges end, graduate students in Minnesota will have other options of paying for school. The self-grad loan offers 2 options, both annual and maximum limits, just like the new federal regulations. The state says loans are not based on credit scores. However, a minimum 670 FICO score or a cosigner is needed to qualify. Do you know your FICO score, Isaac? You don't have to disclose it. I'm just
on
wondering.
the advice of counsel. I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights.
I get little updates on mine. Like I bank with Wells Fargo, so like they'll every single beginning of the month your new FICO score is in, right? Like you don't want to look. Like, I'm not planning on purchasing anything that requires me to have. I mean, my FICO score is actually pretty good. That being said, you always kind of go, ugh. I'm always very fearful when I go to look at it. How is this going to look? Like, August is not going to be great based solely off the fact that we put all of our cross-country trip on a credit card. So I know that's just going to tank my FICO score. And I'm just going to cry myself into a bottle of rum. Back to this story. Minnesota calls Trump loan limits foolish and then went and mirrored it in his own program. Lots of people in states have criticized the Trump administration for eliminating the Grad Plus program, according to Andrew Gillen, a research fellow at the Cato Institute. But none of them have simply recreated the Grad Plus loans. This is an implicit admission that Grad Plus was not a well-designed loan program. All of the replacements look very much like the new loans, which limit how much students can borrow, and in this case, have even more stringent credit ratings and cosigner requirements. Even with limits on the federal and state governments on student loan caps, others argue that Minnesota's program offers too much money. Preston Cooper, a research fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, told The Fix via email that it's good to see a program acknowledge the need for loan limits, but the caps the Minnesota program sets up are extremely high. Those are Minnesota's caps, not the Trump administration that Thief Ellison was criticizing Trump over. Preston Cooper said the SELF program opens up the floodgates, giving students the ability to borrow too much for programs that don't pay off. He pointed out that the $150,000 loan limit for most graduate programs is on top of the $100,000 limit at the federal level, leaving graduate students with the ability to borrow $250,000 while in school. Now, Cooper told The Fix there are good reasons that Congress abolished Grad Plus. The program contributed to tuition inflation and buried students' unpayable debt. If Minnesota isn't careful, it may end up recreating the same problems. So why do I bring all of this up? I bring it up as an example of, once again, that common ground that we could have on various issues that simply cannot occur because of individuals on the left who will never go along with anything on the right and will go out of their way to lie, cheat, and steal if it enables them the ability to make the Trump administration and Republicans look bad. I mean, that's what's happening here. Thief Ellison, right, complaining, saying the new limits on grad loans are foolish and harmful, and yet the restrictions that we put in place to replace these Grad Plus loan programs are even more stringent than Trump put forward. Whether we're talking about issues like this, whether we're talking about fraud, whether we're talking about Cooley Her and the investigation into her alleged horrible behavior, there's a commonality here. These are bad leaders that do not have the best interest of the individuals that they are supposed to be representing at heart. They're political creatures. That's it. The individuals conducting the fraud, much like Adam Schwarzy, who came in to talk about how he just happened to stumble upon the fact as the Minnesota Star Tribune was attempting to do a fact check on his voting record, that back in 2012, somebody else had cast a ballot in his name while he was serving in the armed forces and wasn't even able of voting. And it's probably been happening on a much larger scale. Well, what else is happening that we're not made aware of? And the same thing rings true for fraud. These are broken individuals. And without a wholesale change in leadership here in Minnesota, it's going to continue. You'll hear lip service from Thief Ellison, from Dim Walz, from Lamy Klobuchar as she runs for governor. But make no mistake, if they end up getting a trifecta of power, you can kiss any sort of common sense policies or any sort of accountability relating to the fraud, for example, here in Minnesota. You can basically just go and kiss it goodbye because they're not going to do anything about it because in their minds, it's not politically expedient for them to do so. And as a matter of fact, it's detrimental to what they want in attempting to continue to grow, retain, and create more power for themselves. Because if they do go and tackle the fraud, in their minds, it's a justification of the arguments coming from Republicans. This is all a very long-winded way to talk about how Trump derangement syndrome continues, and it's to the detriment of everybody in this country right now. We're into hour 3 here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment. If you want to leave us a blast, you can drop us a comment. 612-584-4565. 612-584-4565 to hear your voice on the show.
Morning, John. Brian from Northbridge. You know what? The student loan program is so messed up. Go back to the ACA. The government took over the loan program, jacked the rates to pay for the ACA, and schools just started handing out money like candy. That's why people can't pay back their loans. You're paying 12, 13, 14, 15% on these loans. It's crazy. Get the government out of these programs. Period. Great show. So far.
Thank you so much, Brian. I will do my best to not let you down here on the John Justice Show. John.justice@americanexperiment.org. That is the email address if you would like to go and email the show. All right, so we are going to get to an update on Cooley Her. However, I'm a little bit behind on the prep, so let's go here. We were talking election and election integrity. Saw this story this morning on Newsmax. I would encourage everybody to go and tag Elon Musk on X and tell him to deliver some of this money he's planning on spending in the election here to Minnesota. Elon Musk is planning to spend big on boosting GOP voter turnout in the 2026 midterm elections. I don't know about you, but that makes me really happy. Thank you to our crowd here at the John Justice Show. Or just thank you to the preloaded sound effects that are in my system over here. So there's that as well, right?
The best part of waking up is knowing Kamala lost to Trump.
That's right. Musk is bringing back his super PAC, America PAC, which spent more than $260 million on Trump in the 2024 presidential election. The PAC will focus on door knocking, digital advertising, and direct mail aimed at getting out the vote from conservatives, targeting voters who typically don't vote in the midterms. And again, this is all according to sources via Axios. Yes, I'm very, very happy about this. We need all the help we can get. Representative for Musk declined to tell Axios how much he plans to spend. America PAC was an essential partner for our historic Get Out of the Vote operation in 2024. This is according to James Blair, a senior political advisor to Trump, to Axios. And their return in 2026 is a huge boost for Republicans across the country. So again, tag Elon Musk. Tell him to spend some of that money here in Minnesota. We need it. Also, if you happen to own a Tesla, just be careful, because once this news starts to spread, you know, those Governor Tim Walz DFL employees in the state who are inclined to go and damage Teslas may find a new inspiration to go and do so. Just want to point that out. Boy, that was a time, wasn't it? Back when they were going and vandalizing all the Teslas, even though they all had cameras on them. I hate that became a thing. That was like the worst.
Yeah. Why are you gonna vandalize a car with a camera on it?
I know.
Seems dumb.
I know. Just you're vandalizing the car in general. But these are broken people, Isaac. They're broken people.
Yes.
All right. Let's hope that the campaigns aren't broken. War of words continues between gubernatorial candidate campaigns. Let's start here. Mike Lindell's running mate, Philip Parrish, criticized Lisa Demuth for voting in favor of the 2020 resolution declaring racism a public health crisis. Parrish argued that the resolution endorsed a systemic racism theory and called for a governor who would expose corruption instead. The criticism, of course, comes after Demuth criticized Lindell's immigration plan, which would grant work visas to illegal aliens. Okay, I want to break some of this down, here. Because the summary here by our AI overlords is absolutely correct. The only reason why, in my opinion, Philip Parrish is bringing this up is because of the scrutiny that this campaign, Mike Lindell's campaign, has come under because of his ridiculous, stupid, and I'll just go ahead and take a step further, idiotic amnesty plan. But Mike Lindell's gubernatorial running mate slammed a 2020 vote that Lisa Demuth took in favor of that resolution, declaring racism a public health crisis. I'll say up front, I'm not a supporter of the revolution. Excuse me. I am a supporter of the revolution. No, I'm not a supporter of the resolution, nor the fact that Lisa Demuth went and voted on it. But there is some context that's needed in why this vote had taken place. First off, I did do some digging today, and I could not find any relevant news stories with any quotes from Lisa Demuth regarding this. So the next time we have an opportunity to speak with anybody from her campaign, I'll certainly go in and bring it up. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer. So Lisa Demuth voted yay on House Resolution 1, the resolution declaring racism a public health crisis, Philip Parrish wrote in a social media post. working off an article here from Alpha News. The final tally was 82-40. The official roll call lists her name among those voting in the affirmative. This is not opinion. The resolution Parrish referenced was passed by the Minnesota House in July of 2020, just weeks after the death of George Floyd and the chaos that ensued. At that time, Demuth was a rank-and-file member of the House Republican Caucus. So that's the relevant context here. I'm not saying that it justifies Lisa Demuth's vote. I feel like that should have been a no vote. I would have liked to have seen a no vote. But at the same time, I also understand what the logic was more than likely at the time. You have to go back to 2020, post George Floyd, how heated everything was at that moment in time. The pressure that was on everybody to toe the line when it came to the leftist narratives that were out there. It's not an excuse for this vote, but it is a reason why, more than likely, in my view, she decided to go and vote in favor of this resolution at that moment in time. Things were volatile. Again, there was a lot of pressure. And there were a lot of Republicans who were, in hindsight, making, in my opinion, the wrong choices and decisions based off of perhaps a view and a narrative that they had at the time that might have changed, or just because of the pressure that's involved if you go and take an opposite stance to that very forceful narrative that George Floyd was murdered and it was the law enforcement officers, the Minneapolis Police Department's fault. So among other things, the resolution said that race is a social construct with no biological basis. Racism embedded in the foundation of America, beginning with chattel slavery in 1619, and more than 100 studies have linked racism to worse health outcomes. Additionally, the resolution said that racism, doing that thing with my fingers, is a public health crisis affecting our entire state, and a comprehensive intersectional approach is necessary to address the crisis. Now, the House declared the resolution racism a public health crisis and encouraged the government and the Minnesota Senate to adopt similar resolutions. Demuth, who is black, voted for the House resolution. It passed 82-40. There were other Republicans that also voted for it. Barb Haley, Greg Bowie, Tony Jurgens, they all joined Demuth and House Democrats in voting on the resolution. Most of the House GOP, along with its then leader Kurt Doubt, voted against the resolution. Parrish slammed the resolution in a statement saying this was not a simple statement against an individual prejudice, but it was a formal institutional endorsement of the systemic racism theory. And again, I would like to see Lisa Demuth answer to this, even though it's going back 6 years, and I have more on that in just a moment. Minnesota does not need more race essentialist policy lenses, he added. Minnesota needs a governor who will expose the networks looting the state, and not one who helps normalize the ideological tools those networks use to expand power. And again, he's clearly drawing attention to an issue that took place 6 years ago because of the scrutiny that the Lindell campaign is under over the immigration plan that Mike Lindell had put forward. Demuth and Kendall Qualls were among many Republicans throughout the country who criticized that plan I just mentioned. Many Republicans described it as amnesty. Lindell has stood by his plan and said that he has never supported amnesty and never will support amnesty, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because that's what the plan is. It is amnesty. So at this point, okay, either nominee, even with these controversies, right? Either of these individuals, if they get the nominee, I'm voting for them, because these are both better options than anybody on the left, which is more than likely in the gubernatorial race going to be Amy Klobuchar. And while I am curious of Demuth's stance back 6 years ago at the height of this controversy, why she voted the way that she did, and I imagine it's probably because of what I said. There was a lot of pressure at the time, and a lot of these votes were largely symbolic. It didn't go and do anything afterwards. It wasn't anything that took place in the wake of this systemic racism, public health crisis vote. That being said, the controversy is kind of over. I mean, she's been running a successful campaign. She's continued to serve in office. This is the first time that I've actually even heard a complaint about this, even though I have a slight recollection of maybe talking about this back when the vote had taken place. but I don't remember a lot of commentary surrounding it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe people didn't know, but I seem to recall talking about it on the show. You know, she's now moving forward and is running a successful gubernatorial campaign. And I'm sorry, it seems like a bit of a stretch to go and make a big deal about something that happened 6 years ago. So she should answer for it. It's out there in the ether. People can decide on their own whether or not this is an abundance of concern of a vote that she took 6 years ago. But again, it seems pretty clear that the only reason why it's being brought up is because there's an attempt to redirect the attention away from the controversies that the Mike Lindell has created for themselves. To that point, Mike Lindell's proposal to grant permanent work visas to illegal immigrants has now been criticized as amnesty by the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, one of the largest, if not the largest, immigration think tank in the country, argues the plan would negatively impact American workers, drive down wages, and increase competition for jobs. While the plan could generate more tax revenue, CIS warns it might also lead to higher public benefit costs. So under Lindell's proposal, illegal aliens guilty of gross misdemeanors and felonies would not be eligible for conditional work visas. Okay? But what he is proposing is the creation of a 6-month deportation moratorium during which illegal aliens can apply for conditional work visas. That visa would not expire and allow illegal aliens to then go and work in the United States. That is amnesty. There is no other way to describe it. I don't care how you go and word it. I don't care about the word salad that you put out saying it's not. There's an attempt here to sort of redefine what it means to be legal in the United States. The idea being, at least as I have heard of the plan, the idea is that, well, they're not illegal anymore because we've gone and granted them a work visa but not allowed them to vote. So they're a different classification. So it's no longer amnesty once an individual comes out of the shadows, doing that thing with my fingers, who hasn't gone and committed a gross misdemeanor or felony. See, they're not illegal anymore, so it's not amnesty. Well, no, they were illegal before you went and gave them their conditional work visas, and therefore it's amnesty. Now, Lindell has acknowledged that he could not implement the plan as Minnesota governor. He's come under heavy criticism from Republicans across the country in recent days because of his plan. Many Republicans have described the plan as amnesty, as I was mentioning. Now, the Center for Immigration Studies is echoing that same sentiment. The proposal is an amnesty, they're writing. It's an amnesty for a population of undetermined size. It has all of the deficiencies of any amnesty, and it threatens to have a huge impact on the working population in the United States. This is according to CIS resident fellow Andrew Arthur. CIS was founded back in 1985. It provides policymakers with information on the impacts of legal and illegal immigration. Arthur, who previously served as an immigration judge, spoke to Alpha News about Lindell's plan and its downstream effects. Proposals like this, they say, they end up surfacing from time to time. They all have more or less the same features, that it would be everybody, regardless of when they got here, or some portion of the population of people who arrived before a certain date. He described the plan as mass amnesty. He says it would drive down wages for workers at the lowest end of the economic spectrum. It would put an end to direct competition with American workers. And by that, I mean not just U.S. citizens, but lawful immigrants with green cards as well. Lindell, who said he's not in favor of amnesty and will never be in favor of amnesty, previously explained that his plan would generate increased tax revenue as a result of illegal aliens working legitimately and paying taxes. Arthur acknowledged that more tax dollars would be collected under the plan. However, he said the question then becomes how much more would we pay out in means-tested public benefits, such as food stamps and Medicare. And can I just say, I don't give a rip if more tax is brought in. You could tell me that if you provide this non-amnesty citizen work visa that can't vote, we're going to bring in an extra $2 billion. You know what? I don't care. I have to follow the law. You have to follow the law. Isaac has to follow the law. We suddenly just don't get a free pass if we decide to relinquish our ability to vote, which is essentially what this is. Come out of the shadows, register yourself as an illegal alien. We'll change your status to a non-resident citizen, and you won't be allowed to vote. So you can avoid any of the accountability, which has suddenly become the theme of Thursday's show here at American Experiment. You can avoid any level of accountability for disrespecting the sovereignty of this country, and your only punishment is going to be that you're not going to be able to vote in our elections. Oh, but don't worry, everybody. Those individuals who aren't able to go and vote in our elections, as soon as Democrats and if and when they go and take over, they'll absolutely be able to vote in our elections. CIS published a report in June which found that non-citizen households use one or more means-tested programs at substantially higher rates in the United States, U.S.-born, than the U.S.-born in virtually every state. Earlier this month, the Lindell campaign published and then removed a document which summarized Lindell's plan. That document says that unauthorized workforce has a higher labor market participation rate than native-born workers, a 66.6 compared to 61.8%. Now, Arthur from the Center for Immigration Studies quoted from that document and explained that we want to have a labor market participation rate be higher than 70%. But part of the reason the labor participation rate, the LPR, is so low is because most of those workers have all gone and lost hope. He says most of the American workers have lost hope because they are in direct competition with foreign nationals who are willing to work at a lower wage, who have a more limited skill set, the same limited skill set that those people who have dropped out of the labor market have. He added that the reason the low-wage workers leave the workforce is because those workers can get more money from public benefits than from working. Arthur said that giving illegal aliens work authorization give those individuals greater incentive to go and stay in the country. The labor impact, the fiscal impact, and the impact it would have on our ability to secure the border, those are really the three main impacts. But they're the three biggest ones, Arthur said of Lindell's plan. There are plenty of downstream effects and things like that. Let me say up front, again, multiple things can be true at once. If Lindell ends up being the nominee out of the primary, I'll vote for him. He's still a better option than Lamy Klobuchar. You can still support Mike Lindell and not be in support of this plan. You can still be pro-Trump and not agree with his endorsement of Mike Lindell. All those things can be true. The last thing that we as Republicans need to do is start eating our own because of a difference of opinion over these candidates. But we also need to be brave enough to step up and say, these ideas that are being proposed are really, really bad ideas. And sure, everything being equal and these individuals never being able to vote in elections, you know, you could look at it, maybe argue the legitimacy of it. I'm not going to, because I am of the opinion that if you came into the country illegally, regardless of crime or not, you need to go back from where you came from. Just like if I get pulled over by a cop, I'm going to expect to get a ticket. If you are found by immigration services here in the United States to be here illegally, you should just expect to be sent back to whatever border you came over from. It's really just that simple. Let's go back to the blaster line.
First of all, it's just a proposal, and it's most likely not going to happen. Second, who else has a better idea to come up with removing 20 million illegals from this country? They're not all going back. This is a step forward to immigration reform.
No, it's exactly what we don't need. I completely disagree. I have a better idea to come up with removing 20 million illegal aliens from this country. Continue to go and arrest the individuals and deport them who have committed other crimes beyond being in the country illegally, and then enforce the existing immigration laws that we have to the fullest extent of our ability. It's a forced attrition route. You do that on a long enough timeline and you punish businesses for hiring those that came into the country illegally. We've already seen eventually those individuals will go and seek a home someplace else. And yes, it's just a proposal, more than likely not going to happen, but that doesn't mean you don't criticize it. Because if that is an idea that a candidate has, then what other ideas along similar lines do they have? What I find more disturbing about all of this, and it kind of falls in line with the blast there. And listen, I'm critical of your comments, but I'm very appreciative that you left us a comment this morning, and I hope that more people do. 612-584-4565. Now, you're right. It is a proposal. Most likely not going to happen. Not going to happen at the state level because a governor can't go and doesn't have any say over an individual's immigration status. But what I find more disturbing isn't so much the idea. Okay? It's a bad idea, but every candidate, every individual is entitled to their opinion and their ideas. No, what I find more disturbing is that I think that Mike Lindell made the comment without thinking of the political repercussions of it. Mike Lindell was asked a few weeks ago on another podcast. He was asked a few weeks ago about healthcare, how to lower the healthcare costs for Minnesotans. And his answer was essentially, I'm friends with President Donald Trump. I mean, he straight up said he didn't, I appreciated the honesty. He straight up said he didn't have a plan, but that he was going to go and look into it. And I feel like what's happened here is that he presented this idea as a redirect because of a lack of ideas when it comes to the actual issues that Minnesotans are facing on a daily basis. Again, we're on the wrong track. Fraudsters stole over $9 billion. Taxes on small businesses are more than any other state. 55% of Minnesota students can't do math at a grade level. Minnesota is now below average state economically. Kids in Mississippi can read better than kids in Minnesota. This is all fact-based. All of the evidence is available. All the data points that you need. They cannot be refuted. It's at AmericanExperiment.org. And you have Lamy Klobuchar out there, and she's addressing these issues. She's getting her press talking about what she would do to fight fraud, what she would do to potentially go and lower taxes. And I feel like this was an unforced error on Mike Lindell's part, and that's a part of this whole thing that I find disturbing. Because I think when he said it, he didn't realize this was going to be as controversial as it ended up being, and yet, here we are. All right, let's go back to the blaster line. Again, 612-584-4565. If you want to leave us a comment for the show.
Hey, good morning, John, Bruce, and Shakopee. Hey, I just lost a lot of respect for Mike Lindell for doing this, but you got to remember this is self-serving. He makes pillows, and I'm sure he looks for cheap labor, and I'm pretty disappointed in him. Granted, his success is a nice story, but this isn't the right way to go. Have a good day.
Thank you, Bruce. It's great to hear from you. I'm glad that you found the show. Also, if you want to email me, john.justice@americanexperiment.org.
Hey, John, I've been a big fan of Mike Lindell for a long time. He was one of the very few people that had the courage to stand up for Trump after the 2020 election, or so many Republicans were running scared from him. That said, this is a deal breaker. This proves that he's not capable of effectively running the state. It's just a huge unforced error.
Thank you for the comment as well. And again, I want to mention that if, Mike Lindell ends up being the individual who is the nominee for the GOP, I will vote for him. Absolutely. All right, let's go back to the blaster line. A friend of the show, Ron, has a comment.
Just in case Mike Lindell is listening to this show, I would like to invite him to drop out of the race, stick to making pillows, and maybe donate a few bucks. I'm not going to.
I'll stop it there. Not just pillows, those slippers, too. In the middle of when I was doing notes on that last story, I was actually wearing my slippers. Yeah, they're very, very comfy.
I hear the robes are nice, too.
The robes are nice. And I put a my pillow underneath my weary head every evening as I get a good night's sleep preparing for this show, along with my mini leaf night gummies, which still get me to bed on time, which I hope will be joining us back on the show here very, very soon. At least that's the plan. All right, coming up, St. Paul Mayor Kahuli Her. Is that how you say? I must have said, again, it's another name that I used to say Kahuli, but then I hear Cooley. I don't know. She's responding to her sexual harassment allegations made by the police chief, Axel Henry. The allegations include unwanted physical contact, sexualized communication, and inappropriate comments. I have some more audio to share from Lou Raguse on Fox 9, who provides us an update on what had actually transpired and further details on what those allegations actually were. So we'll bring you that information coming up in just a moment here on the John Justice Show, presented by American Experiment.
I looked it up, and the percentage of children in poverty in Minnesota is about 10%, which is lower than the national average. So how come somewhere around a third, 33%, say, of children in Minnesota are on Medicaid if they aren't poor?
Sure, my kids are grown now, but I had 3 kids that I raised, and for us, we could make over $100,000 a year, and still our kids would be on Medicaid, if you can imagine that. That's middle class. That's crazy. And, we also, as a state, I think we should really measure ourselves by how few people have to rely on the government for health care, not how many. Mm-hmm. But if you ask, Governor Walz, he'll say, the more people we feed, the better. The more people on government programs, the better. And that's really how he measures the state. And we really see that in the numbers in Medicaid, which have just exploded.
Think about it. Now that school's back in session, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
We're doing a really big deep dive on Medicaid right now at the center. We're looking at just how the heck this has gotten so out of control in Minnesota. And just like since 2023, okay, we spent $18 billion on Medicaid in the state, okay? Now we are spending $27 billion in this year, okay? And we are spending that on fewer people on Medicaid. So there was 1.4 million people on Medicaid in 2023. Now there is 1.2. So you have to ask yourself, how in the heck can we be spending that much more money on Medicaid? And we're really looking into that because we think a lot of that money is going to people who are dead, people who live in other states, people who are on more than one program. And you are not surprised because you've seen that on so many different programs in the state of Minnesota. But Medicaid is by far the biggest enchilada when it comes to that.
Think about it. Now that school's out for the summer, how are Minnesota students doing? Not very well. Minnesota ACT scores fell again last year and are the lowest they've been in 10 years. In fact, fewer than half of Minnesota students can either read or do math at grade level. Think about it. We used to brag about our schools. Now we're losing to states like Mississippi. Visit AmericanExperiment.org for more information. Think About It is brought to you by Center of the American Experiment, Minnesota's think tank.
My point, 20 million illegals.
Yeah.
Do you know what the cost would be to remove 20 million illegals? In upwards of $1 trillion. Yeah. And guess what? We're probably going to need many of them to sustain our current workforce.
Okay, so
thank you.
No, that's great. Thank you again for leaving a blast. I appreciate it. So you're in support of amnesty. That's what you're saying. Okay, you're entitled to your opinion. I disagree with the cost. What I suggested was enforcing our laws. There may be a cost with that, but it should be something that we're already spending money on, just like we are with law enforcement in the way that they conduct their protecting and serving of the public on a daily basis. It's kind of baked in. We already pay for ICE agents, for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, for Border Patrol, for law enforcement. My point is we do not enforce. We're starting to with the Trump administration, but there are plenty of municipalities across the country and states that act like sanctuary states or just straight up are sanctuary states that don't go and enforce our immigration laws. We don't need immigration reform. All the laws already exist if we just apply them. So it's not going to cost you $1 trillion to remove 20 million individuals, not to mention the fact that those 20 million individuals, I know not all of them will leave, but that's on them. My point is that a lot of them will leave because it's no longer going to be advantageous or viable for them to live in the United States when they're actually being held accountable for the fact that they came here illegally. And that means punishing businesses. And if it means that businesses end up straining under a lack of workers for a period of time, then so be it. Doing the right thing is never easy. It's hard. And again, I don't agree that it's going to cost us $1 trillion. But I do very much appreciate your comments, and I hope that more people leave your blasts at 612-584-4565.
John, good morning. This is all by design. Poor people, stupid people are poor. Poor people require the need of government assistance. Therefore, we have stupid kids in school and coming out of school that are just going to be poor and rely on the government, and they'll vote Democrat all their lives to keep their money, the little bit of money they do get. It's disgusting. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too, and thank you so much for the comment this morning. And I just want to mention again, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. All right. Lou Ragoose, Fox 9, put up a couple of posts regarding the controversies that continue to swirl around St. Paul Mayor Cooley Herr. I have no expectation whatsoever that there's going to be any level of accountability here. I just find the entire story highly entertaining.
St. Paul Mayor Cooley Herr allegedly commented on the...
Okay, so he says Cooley Herr. All right. Turn that up just a skosh, by the way, if you can.
The breasts of a female deputy chief with the St. Paul Police Department while they were in a locker room together.
All right, hold on a second. I got to replay the start of that.
Cooley Herr allegedly commented on the breasts of a female deputy chief with the St. Paul Police Department while they were in a locker room together, then asked that employee her opinion of the mayor's own breasts. These new details I've confirmed with rock-solid sources with knowledge of the sexual harassment investigation currently underway against Mayor Herr. In the deputy chief's complaint, she said that the comments were unwanted and played a role in her leaving the St. Paul Police Department. The investigation was initiated by a complaint by St. Paul Police Chief Axel Henry, who says he himself was a victim of sexual harassment by Mayor Herr after he learned of other officers who say they were targeted as well. An additional alleged victim is an officer who received this text message from Mayor Herr. It says, "Happy Wiener Wednesday. Wish I was having hot dog emoji with all on 6 today." Then there's a meme that says, "When she wraps you up in a blanket after a good wienering." Wienering is slang for sex.
Do you think Lou Ragoose expected that this was what he was going to have to report on? Like in my line of work, it's like, yeah, this is great stuff. It's entertaining. But here you are. You are just a professional journalist. You're covering the fraud here in the state of Minnesota. Yet you find yourself shooting clips for X talking about getting a good wienering. I just imagine Lou Ragoose. It's not a dig on him as well. I find it comical. Sitting back in his head just going, I went to journalism school for this. Wiener Wednesdays. It needs to become a thing. We have Taco Tuesdays. We need to have Wiener Wednesdays. I'm just saying.
I had a hot dog yesterday.
Did you really?
I did.
Was it in honor of... You were inspired by Wiener Wednesday.
I was. I was like, you know what? It's Wiener Wednesday.
Okay. What kind of dog did you have? Do you know? Do you remember?
No, I was at the Twins game.
Oh, okay. Oh, look at you, fancy schmancy. Did you get anything on that?
Ketchup and mustard.
Just ketchup and... You did both?
Both.
You didn't? Okay, wow. You went all in.
All-American dog.
No beans, huh?
No.
Oh, our friend of the show on the road. Be very upset at that.
Yep.
It was a hot dog with... It's like a hot dog with no beans, he wrote.
And on the unredacted photo, which I have personally seen, Mayor Herr photoshopped the face of the officer she sent this to onto the meme. Additional context is that they would often have hot dogs for lunch on Wednesdays and call it Wiener Wednesday. I've left several messages with the mayor and her spokesperson for comment on these latest details that I've confirmed, but they have not responded. If they do, I will add their response in the comments. I've also confirmed that the sexual harassment investigation being done by an outside firm was supposed to be finished by the end of July. This story is developing, so be sure to check back right here for more. I'm Lou Raguse. Follow for more news.
And I think I falsely put him with Fox 9. I think he was with KARE 11, so my bad. My apologies, Lou. So, according to the allegations that were confirmed by KARE 11, it was unwanted physical contact, sexualized communication from Mayor Herr to the police chief, commenting, as he mentioned, on the breasts of a female deputy chief in a locker room when asking that woman her thoughts on hers breast. Okay, so that's a little added rub. Oh, probably.
Come on.
Not the right language.
Come on.
What? What are you talking about? So, commenting on the breasts of a female deputy chief in a locker room and then asking that same woman her thoughts on the mayor's own breasts. What do you think? It's just weird. Also, here's a little bit more from Lou Raguse. And again, I don't know what I find more entertaining, the details or the fact that Lou Raguse has to report on this.
She was just joking. That's the response tonight from St. Paul Mayor Kali Herr after I revealed new details about the sexual harassment allegations she faces. Her statement in full says, as mayor, I take my responsibility to treat every employee with professionalism and respect very seriously. I recognize that some of my attempts at humor fell short of the standard I expect of myself. We've fully cooperated with the independent investigation since it began in April and will continue to do so. I respect the investigative process and believe it's important to allow it to reach its conclusion. I remain confident that the full facts will come to light, and I will continue to focus on serving the people of St. Paul with integrity and dedication. I followed up with Mayor Herr's spokesperson to ask if the unwanted physical contact that Police Chief Axel Henry alleges against her was also a joke. A female deputy chief reported that she retired in part because the working relationship had become untenable after incidents including Mayor Herr commenting on the deputy chief's breasts. The external investigation was originally slated to be done by the end of July, but I'm not sure if that timeline is still realistic. I'm Lou Raguse. Follow for more news.
So, in the allegations, again, Mayor Herr was allegedly doing that thing with my fingers, sex noises, pantomiming an orgasm while stretching in front of police officers at the department's weight room. Yeah, eek is right. Sending a meme to a police officer with his face photoshopped onto it, referencing wienering, which is a sex slang, according to the KARE 11 article. Attorney Christopher Mattel, who I mentioned yesterday, needs his own documentary at this point in time based off of the number of ridiculous cases that this guy's had to reside over. I know who I'm calling if I'm in legal trouble. Well, it would be lawyer extraordinaire first, of course, and then Chris Mattel second, depending on what crime I'm being accused of. Mattel writes that Chief Henry decided to designate himself as the formal complainant against her after becoming aware that the mayor's conduct has extended beyond isolated incidents and has included sexual harassment of subordinate city employees, including members of the St. Paul Police Department. I'm very pro believe all police chiefs. Just want to put that out there. I'm very pro believe all law enforcement officers. Just want to state that for the record. I hope you'll join me. I'm going to get myself a Me Blue. Hashtag Me Blue. The letter includes a screenshot of the text message to a city employee from her talking about the Happy Wiener Wednesday. And then along with the text of the image wrapped in a blanket. Attorney Mattel demanded that the city take steps to perform a full file system extraction of each of Mayor Herr's mobile phones. We talked about that yesterday, but why do I get the feeling not only would that be highly entertaining, but also probably very revealing into the background of Mayor Herr beyond all of this? Like, if you're willing to go and do all of this in public, assuming the allegations are true, what else is not privy to everybody that's going on? I mean, if this is your public behavior, what's happening in that private life? What is her stance on public bathhouses? She working on an ordinance. Is there one in St. Paul? Inquiring minds want to know.
Will they have a Wiener Wednesday special?
I think they should. If there's any
discount.
The Twins should offer
True.
a Wiener Wednesday. Nathan's should do a special. It's usually our go-to is Nathan's. Just throwing it out there.
Good choice.
In case they wanted to sponsor the show. If you want to sponsor the show, john.justice@americanexperiment.org. In her statement Wednesday, Mayor Herr also expressed her belief in the investigation. I remain confident that the full facts will come to light. Ooh, be careful what you wish for there, Miss Herr. And I will continue to focus on serving the people of St. Paul. What does she mean by that, by the way? Excuse me, Miss Cooley Herr, when you say you want to serve the people of St. Paul, what exactly do you mean by that specifically? We want details. Oh, I'm sorry. She does say here. I should have read further. That's my bad. She said, I plan on serving the people of St. Paul with integrity and dedication, concluded the mayor's statement. Well, you know, something tells me she is very dedicated. When it comes to Mayor Cooley Herr, maybe, I'm of the opinion she goes all in. Let me get to a few points on this as your comments roll in to the blaster line. Again, 612-584-4565. So, first off, I have no expectation whatsoever that she is going to be held accountable for any of this. Okay, and it's DFL privilege. It's Democrat plot armor. It's just no one's going to care on the left. If she was a Republican, as we've stated, it would be a completely and totally different ball game. So I don't think there's any expectation by the individuals that are putting forward the allegations and launching the investigation, you know, Police Chief Axel Henry specifically. I don't think there's any expectation that this is going to bring about her resigning or being replaced by anybody. I say that because I want to personally dispense with any idea that there is some sort of other intention here regarding her that brought about these allegations, and that they are more than likely just about the allegations. And as further evidence in my mind, or further opinion, I should say, in my mind, investigations, right? These aren't fun. This isn't something that people want to do. Whenever you're in a situation where you have to go and address a circumstance like this, I mean, oftentimes they fall by the wayside just because people don't want to go there because they're not easy. You run the risk of having your own personal issues come to light that you may not want to share. These investigations are complete and total headaches. They're a pain in the butt. The point being, poor choice of words. Point being that you don't go and issue these types of allegations willy-nilly. You don't do it, I mean, unless you are really all in on retribution for some reason and there is something bigger, which is possible. No, I jokingly say I believe law enforcement officers, but in this case, yeah, I kind of look to this and I go, there's no real upside for the individuals making these allegations. I mean, apart from accountability for the individuals that were doing it. You know, and it speaks volumes about the character of this individual if she acted this way. My expectation is there's probably going to be a lot of other individuals who come out of the woodwork to go and talk about, like I mentioned at the top of the show. There's probably a lot of people around Cooley Herr who are like, oh, that's just how she is. They've probably gone about ignoring this in public behavior for a long, long time. And it's not an excuse for her to say, I thought my attempts at humor fell short. She said, I take my responsibility to treat every employee with professionalism and respect very seriously. I recognize that some of my attempts at humor fell short of the standard and I expect of myself. I fully cooperated with an independent investigation since the beginning in April and will continue to do so. If this is her sense of humor, okay, then she probably shouldn't be serving in this position. Because as a mayor of a major city, you think that it's okay to conduct yourself this way, which is kind of an admission that she did what they claimed that she did, right? That's not a denial. That's her saying that she was just trying to be funny, which kind of is an admission that she was making sex noises, asking law enforcement officers about their breasts and getting the opinion from them of her own. It's all very strange.
So I think I'm going to start acting inappropriately and then go to HR and say, oh, I was just joking, and see how that goes.
I don't think it would go over very well, and I would encourage you not to do that. But you bring up a really, really good point that I'm going to close the show out on here in just a moment. Let me go back to the blaster line, 612-584-4565.
I'm sure all of Mayor Herr's neighbors on Summit Avenue in St. Paul would be happy to join her for a Wiener Wednesday roast out. Seems like something Summit Avenue would approve of.
Oh, a Wiener roast. It's not a bad idea. So the previous blast, Andrew, he made a really good point, right? Saying, I'm going to go and act inappropriately, and then I'm going to go to HR and say, oh, I was only joking. Okay. Let's wrap on this. So the Trump administration is now investigating the other story that we probably talked about as much as Kahuli Herr's alleged inappropriate behavior, and that is these transgender dolls funded by your taxpayer money that has garnered all kinds of attention. The Trump administration is now investigating the Minnesota Department of Education over the alleged concerns about the transgender dolls being used in classrooms throughout the state. The U.S. Department of Education announced on Wednesday that it had opened the investigation after receiving a complaint from Minnesota parents who said that they were not told or given a chance to opt their children out of the activities involving transgender dolls. The dolls, called My Gender Dolls, are expected to be available to Minnesota educators for use with students as young as 4 years old. Working off a story here from Fox 9, presenting removable and interchangeable internal and external genitalia, gender-neutral names, and clothing options for both sexes. The announcement that the Protection of Pupil Rights Amendment, the PPRA, gives parents the rights to review instructional materials and opt their children out of certain activities. The investigation comes as part of a broader push by the Trump administration to enforce parental rights laws in schools across the country, the announcement says. Now, throughout this week, the announcement says the department plans to announce additional enforcement measures to ensure parents remain central in decisions about their children's education. The United States Supreme Court on Tuesday upheld state laws banning transgender athletes from female sports teams. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, appearing at an event to unveil the Office of Public Service, says that nothing will change in Minnesota with the laws up to individual states. Now, U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon, in a statement, said no 4-year-old should be exposed to such material, especially without a parent's knowledge or consent. The Department of Education will enforce the law to its fullest extent, putting parents and families firmly in the driver's seat of their child's education. The Minnesota Department of Education has since clarified that it has no plans to mandate the dolls to school districts in 2026. But make no mistake, I mean, this is a slippery slope that'll end up with these items inside of children's classrooms. The point is this, though, with all of this, is that this type of propaganda, this type of dangerous material is already available and up on the walls in too many of our public schools. And this is the point that I wanted to make based off of Andrew's blast as we get ready to wrap up the show today. There's a double standard that takes place here. Because he's right. He makes a joke that he's going to go and act inappropriately like the allegations of the St. Paul mayor, and then go to HR and say, oh, hey, I was just joking. But the double standard is if you're a politician and you're on the left, you're not going to be held accountable for this. There won't be enough public pressure for you to be removed from office. Wherein if you actually go and do what Andrew said, yeah, you're probably going to be fired. And there's a similar point to be made about what's happening here. We need to close the gap, the gap in society that leads to how we treat the children in normal everyday circumstances in society versus how we treat them in public schools, because there is a massive double standard that takes place here. I made the example before, and I want to make it again, and I'll use another one too. If you have these gender dolls, and let's just say you're an adult. Let's say it's me. I have these gender dolls cartoon characters showing body parts, genitalia, that can be swapped out, and I'm on the street and I see a 4-year-old and I hand that material to a 4-year-old, I'm going to get locked up, and I should get locked up. But somehow, because it's taking place in a public institution and taxpayer dollars paid for it, and it's a part of public education, it's suddenly now societally acceptable. Think about the parades that take place in June. You have children that are lining the streets. You've got individuals out there walking around naked. Chubby dudes there in tighty whities bending over and twerking in front of children. Shame on the parents who brought them there in the first place. But here's my point. Totally socially acceptable. Totally fine, right? Nobody bats an eye. People may complain about it like myself, but in terms of any sort of repercussions for that, there aren't any. And yet, you take that same dude in tighty whities and bring him to a park with a bunch of kids running around and have him act the same way, he should end up and probably will end up in court in the same way that Shiloh Hendricks did. So we need to start removing this mentality that separates these two different areas of society out, where apparently in one area, adults are able and are given credence to go and act like a bunch of pedophiles and give our children completely and wholly inappropriate sexual material, where in regular life, if you went and did that, they would throw you behind bars. That's where the focus needs to be, is stripping away that mentality and saying, no, the societal norm is the standard. What you're doing via taxpayer dollars under the guise of government is absolutely wrong, and it's abuse of children, just like it would be for somebody in the real world. Thank you so much for spending time on the show this morning. If you missed any portion of today's show, the podcast will be available shortly on all major podcast platforms. Also, on the MixLR app, the podcast will be available there as well. If you want to watch the show and you didn't have a chance to watch all of it, you can catch the replay. Those videos will be up on Facebook and on YouTube under both Center of the American Experiment and my personal YouTube and Facebook pages as well. John J.O.N. Justice. Tomorrow is a Freedom Friday. In studio, we got a full house, and I'm so excited for our first official Freedom Friday. Producer Isaac will, of course, be here. We'll have Katherine Johnson and Grace Keating and A.K. Kamara and Representative Max Reimer all sitting comfortably on the couches and the chairs of the American Experiment Studios. Have yourself a fantastic rest of your Thursday, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow morning starting at 6 a.m. And remember, there is a replay of today's show that'll begin sometime between 4:30 and 5 o'clock if you're listening on the stream at americanexperiment.org or on the MixLR app or wherever you're enjoying it, including the @MN Think Tank X page where you can watch as well. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. God bless, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Now we'll go out on a little Zima Fizz.
He speaks through static waves at dawn, a voice that lingers when night is gone. Twin cities hum with stories spun. John Justice rides the rising sun.